Well, hello, everybody. It's 8:15 in a little bit on Tuesday morning, March 11, the year 2025. This little date thing I have, which you've probably noticed, 400 or 500 of these that start. I don't know how many broadcasts I've done. I'll have to use my AI bot. Everybody's all frightened about the AI bots, and it's going to take over the world, and we're all going to be, only if we let it. AI, just so you know, artificial intelligence. I'm not bragging. I'm just trying to, it's just a vocabulary word, which I'm not going to say the rest to you. Many of you have just not heard about. I'm crowding 80. Oh my God, I'm not there yet. I'm crowding 80. Yeah. Crowding. Oh my God, it's getting so close. 9 days, baby. T-minus 9 days and counting. Then it's going to be the first day of spring. And then, pew, Jimmy came into the world in 1945. Can you believe that? The end of World War II. Anyway, so a few years after that, let's say, 25 years after that. Yeah. When I was 25, 26 years old, I was a serious coder, a programmer, one of those kind of people. Not a backroom coder, okay? I wasn't like, after I was a coder in college too. Yeah. Let's see. Went to high school from 1959 to 1963. Would you believe it? In 62, I came in some circles at the West Point. At West Point, I was West Point. We've heard of that, right? At West Point, I scored. President Kennedy had a health. That's John F. Kennedy's. I'm sorry, John. Yeah, boy. What time is it? 8:20. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Remember him? He's like, just got put into into Trump's cabinet, the kitchen cabinet. His uncle, John F. Kennedy, in 1960, like 2 or something, had a health and physical fitness, challenge, so hey, a few years later, like 55 years later, his John F. Kennedy Jr.'s nephew. I don't know. I'm never sure of the architecture of these surnames and this and that, and I just know that Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s uncle is John F. Kennedy. So, uncle. The reverse of uncle. John F. Kennedy's brother's son. How about that? There you go. You go over, you slide over one to the right, and you go down two. Yeah. Robert F. John F. Kennedy's brother's son is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. sitting on Trump's cabinet. How about that? Can you imagine Thanksgiving in the Kennedy family in Kennebunkport? They're all sitting around carving the turkeys. You know, a place like that in Martha's Vineyard, where they have their Thanksgiving celebration. And in the Northeast, you know, with the birth of the United States, oh my God, the Declaration of Independence. You know, turkeys, Thanksgiving, and all that kind of stuff has a little harder meaning than when you get down here in South Florida. You know, you're almost people around here trying to figure out how to spell Thanksgiving. But, you know, we have turkeys and all this. Oh, my God. Yeah, the butterball turkey, the fresh turkey, the non-frozen turkeys, you know, where they clean them up and they ziplock them and seal them in some kind of a polyethylene bag. Thank God the Green New Deal didn't eliminate the sealed up polyethylene bags. You couldn't have a fresh turkey anymore unless you went out there and grabbed one and chopped its head off. Turkey's a big bird, by the way. When you get a 25, 30-pound breast, that's, you know, it's all muscle. The breast it's connected to the wings, you know. And when a turkey flaps its wings, you know, it's got a wingspan of about 6 feet, and it'll smack you in the face with and bite you. And I'll tell you, a turkey bite, woo! I remember as a little kid, I grew up, you know, we had farm property somewhere around Honesdale, Pennsylvania. If someone can Google that and probably figure out where that is. It's somewhere in an afternoon driving distance from the North Shore of Long Island. You go across, you know, west, young man, across Long Island from Roslyn Heights, East Hills. Oh yeah, I grew up in poverty. No, I literally had the silver spoon in my mouth. Yeah, sterling silver, by the way, not just regular old silver beaten with a ball-peen hammer. We're talking sterling silver. Super, super fine, purified, rarefied sterling silver. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can't blame me, right? My father did well, and provided for all the parental needs of my dear mother. Jimmy popped out in 1945, March 20, the first day of spring, at 9:36 a.m. How about that? I know from where I came, so to speak, or at least the time and date. I don't want to think about any of the other parts. Anyway, so when I was like 10, 9, 10, 8, 9, 10, 11, my mother would pack up the picnic basket where Peter Piper picked the pickles. Sorry for the P words. And we'd head off. We'd go west, young man, across the estate properties of country estates, and heading towards Manhattan. You know, what the heck? All these skyscrapers and all that. Flying over, you know, Trump's residence when he was 6 or 7. When I was 8 or 9, you know, I think I got Trump beat by a couple of years. Just a couple. Just 2. Anyway, so we'd head west, young man, and go over at Jamaica Estates, Trump's family residence, which is just like a 2-story house on, a builder's half acre, which is actually a quarter acre. Not a lot of opulence there, but Trump's dad did very well. I mean, he was building, a lot of apartment buildings in Manhattan. No, not so much skyscraper office buildings. He might have bought a few of those, traded a few of those, like when you play Monopoly. That's as close as I've gotten to buying big buildings. It's some Monopoly. Marvin Gardens. I like 2 apartment buildings on Marvin Gardens. That playing card, I believe it has a yellow banner over the top of it. Anyway, so we'd head over to Honesdale, Pennsylvania. And I remember walking the fields of this farm property. It wasn't a corn farm. It was a pasture property with cattle and pigs, chickens, a couple of turkeys. We didn't grow more than we were going to eat, And it was, people take care of it. Because that's not what our family did. We were the Saturday morning, Sunday afternoon farmers. You know what I'm saying? Then everybody else did everything from thereafter. Because my father had other interests other than raking out the stalls, where he had a couple of horses. Oh boy. I can write a book, what I do not know about horses. They were too big, As a 7-year-old, you look up at this huge, the head was bigger than I was. I figured, you know what? This sucker wants to take a bite. I'm decapitated. So you hold up an apple and wham! That sucker grab a whole apple and, munch it down. Oh my God, like it was a raisinette. Remember raisinettes? Oh God, I like those. Those fresh, soft raisins smothered in beautiful milk chocolate, Ziploc in this little brown bag that you could buy at the candy store. There are no candy stores anymore, It's a shopping mall. Yeah, a little corner place, kind of like just imagine a small deli, but they didn't have meats. That was a candy store. You could go there and buy cigarettes. You could buy, lip gloss, all that stuff to keep your lips from freezing and cracking. You buy a little Visine. Or you could buy candy bars, chocolate bars, oh my God, Heath bars. Whew. So we go down to the that's how I learned to read, so to speak. I learned to read, How do you not learn to read? With a mother who was a Vassar scholar. Vassar, I believe, an all-ladies college, very private, because my mother was the daughter of my grandfather. How about that? We're going up the family tree here a little bit. Daniel Lawrence Bayless. You can look him up. He hand manufactured in his basement, where he had what is known as wire lathes, which he hand ground and made. The portable manual typewriter, not electric. No. No power required. It looked like take a suitcase and cut it in half, or a briefcase and make it about 6 inches fat. So if you had a 14-inch, 15-inch by 13-inch by about 7 inches tall, put a handle on it, that's a portable typewriter. But you take off the shell, the top shell, and you can leave the bottom thing in, and you have your portable typewriter. It's anchored to the bottom shell. It kind of hinges on the back of the shell. And you open up this thing, and there was a typewriter. My grandfather invented, if you will, I guess you call it invented. He hand machined every piece for the Underwood, not underwear, the Underwood Typewriter Company. There was a person by the name of Underwood, which my grandfather worked for, and he invented the portable typewriter for Underwood. And so my grandfather, Daniel Lawrence Bayless, which is my mother's maiden name. How about that? Yeah. Married Wilson, that's how it became a Wilson. And then Buddy Bayless, that was my mother's name, Buddy Bayless. She was a tough cookie. A smart one. Ah, Lordy. Yes, sir. Good business head. She was my father's secretary, could you believe it, a long time ago. And they got married and they had a few kiddies. One of them is Jimmy. You're speaking to you right here at 8:33 a.m. in sunny Boca Raton. Yep, there's the current time right there, 8:34 a.m. on the button, plus 5 seconds. Yep. So over there in Honesdale, Pennsylvania, I remember walking around with I looked, if any of you out there know what Dennis the Menace, how about that for a name, Dennis the Menace? They should have called me Dennis. I shouldn't have been called Jimmy Bob. No, Jimmy. Hey, Jimmy, how you doing? Except when my mother was not happy with me. James, make your bed. Tie your shoes. No running in the house. You can hear some of these words barked out. I did everything opposite to what those 3 words you just heard. Yeah. But back, add about 20 years to that, and I was a COBOL programmer. I'm circling back to the artificial intelligence story that I started a few minutes ago. I know you keep circling back in all these sub-stories. It's hard to get me from one place to the next in a straight line. It's kind of a, it's kind of a complicated roadmap as we go through, northeastern Pennsylvania. Heading out to Honesdale, Pennsylvania, then heading to Union College. And I was a coder. But see, now back in the, 60 years ago, let's keep it simple, 60 years ago, not 16, 60, I was a coder. And in the early days of computing, IBM made a machine called the IBM 403. Sounds like this. Oh my God. Now the 403 probably weighed 4,000 pounds. You say, well, that's a pretty heavy computer. Yeah, well, guess what? It was 4,000 pounds of motors and gears, and it wasn't 4,000 pounds of semiconductors. No one even heard of a semiconductor. No. It had motor, and you had to... I swear to God, you had to, when the IBM, right? International Business Machines, IBM. When the IBM service guy came to work on the 403, he looked like he, a clean grease monkey. Because with the cans of specialized machine oil, you say, what? What the hell kind of computer you got here? And you're feeding it machine oil. Because a long time ago, they didn't have mainframe computers. I swear I was a coder, which really meant I was a wirer. They had you've heard of pegboard, right? Pegboard you put on your garage wall, and you have these little hooks, and then you can hang your wrenches and your hand saws and your hacksaws and a pack of screwdrivers. And okay, that's pegboard. That's masonite pegboard. And you have the big sheets of masonite, which you could, go to the hardware store, today, aka Home Depot, which is a hardware store, a lumber store, a feed store, all under. It's like a grocery store for Harvey Home Improvement. Yeah. You would think Home Depot would be a good investment right now, because interest rates are a little bit on the high side for mortgages. People are going to stay in their home and fix it up instead of go getting a new one, because you don't want to turn in your 3% mortgage to get a 6% mortgage, which means the interest rate is twice, which means your mortgage payment is up 40%. Who wants to have a 40% higher mortgage payment? Almost everybody has a mortgage payment. Yeah, except for the people that lived out in East Hills where I lived. Yeah, no mortgage for Mr. Wilson. No. Cash. You can't afford a house, you don't buy it. No. My father didn't believe in all this installment loan stuff. I remember when I was like 14, two guys in suits, in the polished shoes, suit and tie, coat, a briefcase or two. They come knocking on our front door. I peek around over to the side and I look through the windows. I go run for my mother. I said, there's two guys with suits at the front door. And they're not dressed in black, so it's probably not the funeral service. So my mother opens the door very slowly. Back up there in East Hills, we had a storm door. Well, what's that? Well, your front door had two doors. You had a storm door, which actually faced the weather out front. And then you had a big, heavy front door, which opened up into your house. So you had a door right behind another door, and it was probably 6 inches between the two. So when you wanted to let someone in or talk to them, you'd open up the big heavy door, hinged on the left handle on the right, open up, and you'd open up the front door, which is a big heavy, 3-inch thick wood, oak door. You couldn't get through an oak tree. You couldn't get through an oak door either. That thing was 3 inches thick. Can you imagine? All made out of oak planks, and that was my father's idea of security. No, he had glass all along the front of the house. All you had to do was throw a rock through that and you'd get in. It'd be noisy, but you'd get in. We had these big thermopane windows. The thermopane is two windows, separated by a 1/4 inch of air. Might have had some silver, super fine silver powder, glazed on the inside portion of one of those thermopanes. So when the sun would come in and hit that window, about 60% of the sunlight, the bright light, the low frequency light, the infrared light, would ricochet off that thermopane instead of coming into the house. Or else, boy, that house would be hot. Yeah, draperies that came all the way to the front, covering up all that glass. I mean, it really is like 40 feet of glass across and 8 feet tall. Whew, that's a lot of glass. Whew. And then you had these oak doors over on the left side of all that glass. And then you had the thermopane. Remember that? We're going to circle back to these two guys in suits knocking on the door. Polished brown shoes. Dark blue suits. Maybe a little pinstripe. A faint white pinstripe on one of them. I get my mother. She comes running to the door. She opens up the big oak door, but she would not open the thermopane. The storm door. Everybody that's comes from up north knows what a storm door is. You got the front door and you got the storm door. Well, the storm door is basically like aluminum, steel, and a glass window on top of it. It stood up about 2.5 feet tall and about 30-inch wide, right? 30-inch wide storm door. Yeah, that's about it. Oops. And so there's these two gentlemen, and so there's like a 3/16 inch glass, and so you can see the guys, because the whole, you got this 2 or 3 foot glass by 30-inch glass and a 36-inch door, probably the storm door, and you can look straight into those guys. You're standing up and they're standing up. They're about one step below you. You had to walk up about 3 or 4 steps to get to our front door to begin with from the outside. So you walk up these flagstone steps. Anybody that comes from the Northeast knows what flagstone is. And it's slate, basically. Kind of like pieces of slate. The kind of slate they used to use in pool tables. Anyway, they walk up these flagstone steps. Grouted in, with the steps about 8 inches tall for each step. So, you had to step up quite a bit. And from a 7-year-old perspective, an 8-inch step is a pretty tall climb. As I remember, I had to step up quite a bit. Yeah. So you got these two suited guys, and they're knocking on the door. My mother opens the big oak door. She looks through the storm door, and you got these two suited guys. Mrs. Wilson? My mother says, yes. What can I do for you? She was a very polite person, but a very smart one. Yes, sir. Was my father's secretary, but let me tell you, there were no toys in the attic. That's an expression of a long time ago. If you knew somebody that was a little weak between the ears, if you know what I'm saying, not the sharpest knife in the drawer, she was a sharp knife in the drawer. You watch out before you grab that blade. Grab that one by the handle. Because she was a sharp one. So they said, Mrs. Wilson, we can't find your mortgage. We're from, the First National Bank of Manufacturers Hanover Trust, I think was my father's bank. And he had accounts in there. But his idea of accounts was checkbooks. He had these, an exciting checkbook in his office that opened up. It's almost like a 3-ring binder with, 8.5 by, 11 by 8.5 by 14 inch, this paper, that looked like, like stock certificate paper. But it was perforated, he could write a check, but the check was, 8.5 by 4 inches tall, And he'd handwrite those checks, to whoever he was writing checks to. So Manufacturers Hanover Trust Company was a bank a long time ago. God knows what the etymology is of that bank. Oh, in banking, even a long time ago, the big bank would eat the little bank. And then the even bigger bank would eat the big bank. And the giant bank would eat the big bank. And then the super megalopolis whale bank would eat that. So it was I guess the birth of Pac-Man. Think of Pac-Man. Anyway, so Manufacturers Hanover Trust Company, these guys, they knock on the door, they're staring my mother straight in the eye and says, "Mrs. Wilson, we can't find your mortgage." And my little mother thinks and says, she's trying to think, did my husband pull a fast one on me and throw a mortgage on there and I didn't know about it? I don't think he would have the cojones to do that. That's my mother was fluent in 5 languages, by the way. So I threw a little Spanish at you. Latin? Can you believe it? How about that? How would you like to be fluent in Latin when you're speaking the King's English? Latin? French? Why French? Because it was the international language of the 1800s. Today English is supposedly the international language. You go over to Europe and you go in the major banking circles, in Davos, when they're all sitting around with all the flying in all their private jets. Back in let's just say the late 1800s, the international language was French. Yes, sir. Not English. No. And probably second place in the language scale would be like, German or something. English was down the list a little bit. But, in the early 1900s, that switched over to the international language being English. The King's English. Yeah, because the United States became a world power, if you will. And if you didn't know how to speak English, and you were anywhere, on the other side of the Atlantic, you just weren't up to speed on what's going on in the world. Not Russian, not a lot of these other languages of the 150, 60 countries 190 countries that are floating around on Earth today. International language is English, and it still is. The international currency, if you will, if you want to think of currency as the international currency, would be the US dollar. And if Trump is doing anything on the global stage, now this guy's, Trump, he has no toys in the attic either. Behind those blue eyes and that, red hair kind of, people that I know that had red hair had very fair skin. You throw them out in a bathing suit, and in about 45 minutes they were sunny side up, if you know what I mean. You stay under the umbrella, whitey. Yeah, if you had any kind of 50%, 30%, red hair in your heritage, yeah. you burnt at the beach. So, Trump, with his fair skin and formerly reddish brown hair, if you can imagine what his head of hair used to look like, 50 years ago when he was a 28-year-old dude flashing around the social circles of Manhattan because of his father's wealth, massive father's wealth. So, Trump's regardless of all the, the negativisms, because, Trump's got you either like Trump or you don't like Trump. There's no one halfway. No one's halfway. Now, we probably had about 3 or 4 million voters out of the 150. There's 150 million people that voted in this last election on November 5th. How about that? I'm going to circle back to the two bankers standing outside my front door in a minute. There were 150 million voted. You had like 76 million people voted for Trump, and 2 or 3 million people voted for the other guy, lady, actually. Can you imagine? Phew. Kamala Harris, if she was our president, God almighty, everybody would have to go to Sunday school every Sunday and pray that something good happens to the United States if Kamala had a 4-year term here right after Biden. Forget Democrat or Republican. It's not a matter of that. It's a matter of the whole U.S., the whole society that we lived in for the last, 75 years, 100 years. Starting right back in when Ford started making cars with an assembly line, way back, 1905, 6, 7. Pretty exciting 120-year history. We came from hand cranking a Ford motor car, replacing the horse and carriage. And believe me, if you were a horse and carriage, oh yeah. Is it early in the morning? No, it's almost 9 o'clock. Come on, wake up. Jeez. Yeah. There we go. It's 8:55 a.m. Yeah. So, for 120 years, we did pretty good. And, but you can't have 8 years of, not doing things that protect the country. It was almost like they were trying to, when you want liberalism, socialism. Now, this is not democracy. This is the opposite of democracy. This is opposite of what Democrats used to be about, We have a marvelous history of Democrats and democracy in the early years, just in the development of the United States political system, the two-party system, whatever. A lot more Democrats than Republicans. Republicans, those crusty old bankers, people that owned a lot of stuff. And the Democrats are the working men, the people that used to come home and have to wash their hands before they could even get near the dinner table. But, Trump is like I say, he's a smart one. And when you're you get a lot of people that do a lot of multiplying and dividing, accountants and this and that. He bought Mar-a-Lago, which is the former C.W. Post estate. It used to be called the winter the winter White House for people that weren't even in the White House. It was a big old grand place with 30-foot ceilings, huh? You got about 23-foot ceiling. You're going to go up another 8 feet? My God, talk about a tall ladder. Yeah. So he bought Mar-a-Lago for an auction in the state of Florida. The state of Florida received Mar-a-Lago. We're circling back to Trump here in a minute. So when the final heir passed away that owned, Post Toasties, CW Post, yeah, big estate. Whew, my God, it was, right out of the Roaring 20s. I mean, the CW Post, they built a house on the southern tip of Palm Beach, on 25 to 30 acres. Imagine 30 acres on the island of Palm Beach. 1/3 of an acre is $12 million just for the dirt. Forget about what you want to put on top of it. If you got any money left over to put something on top of it. Yep, $12.5 million for the lot, and then you put a $20 million house on top of it, and you got yourself a $30 million house. Rounding down. And here the judge in New York was deciding that Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million for the CW Post estate. Now Trump, he did buy it at auction, and because the CW Post estate, which is a real thick, they couldn't use staples on that will and testament. When she passed away, a lot of assets. Well, it held the Mar-a-Lago. That's what they called it. Mar-a-Lago. And an opulent museum property, if you will. Well, Florida received it because there were no more post estate people in the family tree. When she died, that was it. There was no heir to receive any of these assets. So there were, museum properties all over the country were given to the states. Mar-a-Lago was basically handed over to the state of Florida. She didn't have anyone else to give it to. Can you imagine? That's what Elon Musk is worried about. The Americans aren't having enough babies. Our society is going to die off. You don't have 3 or 4 babies per family. A husband and wife can't have 2 babies. That just barely replaces yourselves when you drop dead. You got to have at least 4. Well, they didn't teach that to the CW Post people, and they finally died off about 30 years ago or more. And so this Mar-a-Lago got bequeathed. There's another one of those legal words which, let's just say, will and testament, bequeathed to the state of Florida. State of Florida said, marvelous. The CW Post estate is in the hands of the state of Florida. Because the island of Palm Beach is in Palm Beach County, the southeastern portion of Florida, and it's the state of Florida. And now we have Mar-a-Lago. So they really loved it for about a year. And then about 6 months into their first year of ownership, they realized, estate properties like this, there's a lot of wind and a lot of rain and a lot of tropical, bugs and snakes and lizards. And, up north, you're lucky if you have a woodpecker. Well, down here you got alligators. All kinds of big beasties floating around your gardens. Well, the state of Florida said, holy crap. Just for the exterior maintenance of Mar-a-Lago, this is a long time ago now, 25, 28 years, it was $1 million a year just to barely cut through the landscaping. The shrubberies, cut everything and pick up all the stuff and, keep the property clean and cut the lawns. And, they had croquet courts. Any of you heard of croquet? I bet a lot of you never heard of croquet. Well, it ain't pickleball, sweetie. Yeah, that was a game that the wealthy played, and they had their, their very light beige pants. The men and the women. Oh no, the women. They had these nice, neat skirts. Skirt, not dresses. You dress in the evening and you have a skirt during the, for lunch. Sweetie, put on your skirt. I'm going to put on my beige pants, and we're going to have we have a 1 o'clock croquet out on the western lawn. Can you imagine? The western lawn? That gives you the idea there's a north, a east, and a south lawn. Oh yeah, well, around Mar-a-Lago, when you got 40 acres in the middle of tropical paradise, they played croquet on the west lawn for a property that cost $1 million just to to prune the palm trees and cut the lawns, if you will. Well, Trump bought that at auction because the state of Florida said, holy crap, we got to unload this sucker because it's costing us, next year it's going to be $1.2 million to do the landscaping. And, we've done some cash flows on that. And in not too long, it's going to be like $5 million just to keep up this place. And we're not talking about the insides yet. We're just talking about everything on the other side of all this beautiful glass windows and teak framed windows. Teak. That's a very exotic wood that boats are made out of. Well, the framing around the big glass windows of Mar-a-Lago, if not made of alabaster, is teak wood, which there are not many houses in Florida that are framed in teak wood, that are on land as opposed to being on, a vessel like the Titanic or something. So Trump, if you add, some landscaping and some fees and development costs and everything, Mar-a-Lago cost Trump about $10 million. That didn't all go to the state of Florida. No, the state of Florida got let's round up to $7 million, and then Trump put in another fast $3 million. And you got this opulent estate property, huge. It's almost like a hotel property, but it was a residence. A 30 bedroom residence. How about that? They got 65 bathrooms. 65 bathrooms? I mean, it takes a crew of 5, just to wipe down the sinks every day. Yeah, 35 bathrooms and 60 bathrooms and 30 bedrooms. These ceilings that go up like 28, 30 feet. You got a door. The smallest door opens up. It's 8 foot tall, 8, 9 foot, 16, 12 foot doors. Oh my God. Doors probably weigh 500 pounds a piece. So they open a little slow because they're on these hinges. You can imagine what a hinge is like with a 500-pound door that's 12 feet tall. 3 hinges. Big, solid brass hinges. The bolts are, a whole lot. This is a skinny bolt on a hinge like that. The size of his pen. Yeah. No. Anyway, so Mar-a-Lago's super unbelievable property. We're circling back to one item of the net worth of Trump. Now, do you think Trump has a residential mortgage on that property? No. All these big estate property, of course, that's the biggest estate property I know that was on the island of Palm Beach. Trump's son, Donald Trump, I'm going through, I came out of Royal Trust Bank, which is the grandchild of the Royal Bank of Canada, if you will. Canada has like 4 banks in the whole country. Well, Royal Trust Bank is a piece of that, a $40 billion piece of that, when I was at Royal Trust Bank. Well, we bought a bank on the island of Palm Beach. You know who the president of that bank was? H. Loy Anderson. Now, any of you know the hierarchy of the island of Palm Beach? The H. Loy Anderson family, you know, when you have 3 names like that, like I'm James L. Wilson. Well, when you're just kind of like a regular person, you spell out the word James, and the middle name, L, for Lawrence, named after my grandfather, and Wilson, named after my father. But when you're part of the super mega wealthy, they don't pronounce the first name, so it's H.Loy, the middle name, Anderson. H. Loy Anderson. Big. He owned a bank. A very exciting bank. Almost kind of like the Mar-a-Lago version of a bank on the island of Palm Beach. I mean, not that it was big and opulent, but, you know, they had all 16-foot ceilings in the Loy Anderson Bank. You know, you didn't even, a lot of people didn't even know what the H stood for. H. Loy Anderson. Well, his daughter, H. Loy Anderson's daughter, was like 1 year old. When I was a senior kind of a person, I used to have to sign off on all the loans over $1 million that H. Loy Anderson did. He was like the president and CEO of the bank when Royal Trust Bank bought H. Loy Anderson's bank. I mean, they had a vault, a walk-in vault, that's the size of my living room, dining room, that just hung. It was a big coat room with mink jackets from all the wealthy, and, you know, within 50 miles of H. Loy Anderson's bank. So the mink stoles that these wealthy people, and, you know, wealthy people, you know, they have 4 or 5 of them, you know. You'd have the short stall. You'd have the stall that goes right down to your ankles, mink stall. You got all these poor little mink animals, gave up their life, and they got sewn together to create these mink jackets. And it's, yeah. Well, Loy Anderson's bank had a big refrigerated, temperature, humidity controlled vault. I mean, you know, thick vault, 12-inch reinforced concrete walls, big vault door. You open up that door, you think you was opening up for, you know, billions of dollars in cash. No, you open it up, it's got all, it's yeah, it's got mink stoles all lined up, you know, numbered, serially numbered, so that the person could look up where Mrs. Anderson's mink stole was. No, not that stole, because then it went H. Loy Anderson's wife's stole A, B, C, D, E, F, because she had 5 or 6 of them, different colors. Of course, you had that different colors. You had white mink stoles, and you got brown mink stoles, and then you got, the variegated brown mink stole. Stole jackets, that you wear to the theater. Yeah, I mean, that's not that long ago. It's in our world history, in our American history, in the history of Palm Beach, where you remember John F. Kennedy? Oh, yeah. The Kennedy estate down here in the island of Palm Beach. Well, I can tell you, Mar-a-Lago was large compared to the estate property that the Kennedy family had. And the Kennedy family was a pretty sizable family. John F. Kennedy, the president, his brother, and now his brother's son is in the kitchen, in the cabinet of Trump. I mean, it's like this incestuous family. I mean, Trump is such a character, such a dynamic force. I mean, he's a tough cookie. Everyone, like I say, everyone isn't going to lie. I've never had the pleasure of meeting our president, Trump, or any of the other Trumpers. I can go down the food chain a little bit, and I know people that know him. Anyway, the judge in New York City case said Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million. What, are you kidding me? The front door costs $18 million. It's such, terrible. And why did they devalue that in a sense? Well, Trump didn't assign the right values on his financial statement. Yeah, he did. He had like 3 or 4 sets of accountants that made sure everything was like on the up and up. Or else the IRS would come in there and clean his clock. Oh yeah, you had 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 appraisals. How the hell do you appraise Mar-a-Lago? The hedge is worth $3 million. Yep. They had a helipad in the front of Mar-a-Lago, on the beach side, of course. On the east lawn, the southeast lawn, something like that. 12-inch thick reinforced concrete, big circular helicopter pad made suitable for a big military helicopter that would fly the president back and forth from Palm Beach International Airport, which is a quick 5-minute ride on a helicopter over, from the Mar-a-Lago estate, his winter residence. Now, when you have a winter residence that costs $5 million for the landscaping budget, that, in my definition, is a billionaire. More than a billionaire. Maybe 10 billion. Let's just round down to 10 billion. Okay? So, you got a huge net worth, huge financial capacity. And if he didn't have cash, he could get his hands on cash. He owns, like 11, lost count a little bit, like 11 world-class global private golf resort clubs around the world, kind of thing, where people play golf. That's where there was a guy hiding in the bushes. Trump was playing golf at one of his Palm Beach International Resort golf course, whatever it's called. Anyway, circling back to H. Loy Anderson, his daughter is now dating Donald Trump Jr., Would you believe? Trump's first son is now dating this little baby that I knew. It's a stunning Palm Beach, erudite, because H. Loy Anderson, all that stuff, ended up in the passing down to the estate. I don't think H. Loy Anderson is with us. I have a feeling he may not be with us. Or if he is with us, he's, probably not on a treadmill. So his daughter was the owner of the H. Loy Anderson Bank on the island. I mean, how many banks are there on the island of Palm Beach? Where the bank building is worth, $500 million, probably. Heading down Worth Avenue. Yeah. The bank was right on Worth Avenue. That's like, what is that, Worth Avenue? Yeah, the restaurants on Worth Avenue. Woo. Yeah, the lunch spots he used to go to. I used to meet some of those folks. H. Loy Anderson and his senior lending guy. And, I'm trying to think of, like the operations lady that ran that bank. We had a guy, I mean, you talk about fraudsters. I'll circle back to where I began here. So I'm up with Charlie O'Mara. That's the guy that was like the right-hand man, the senior lender, senior vice president of H. Loy Anderson's bank. His name was Charlie O'Mara. Nice guy. Charlie O'Mara and myself were on the bank acquisition team of Royal Trust Bank. How about that? As our banking careers expanded, and we bought 35 banks all throughout the state of Florida in the Royal Trustco acquisition thing. There were 6 of us. He did the commercial lending portfolio examinations. I did the real estate lending portfolio examinations, and we have a CPA kind of a guy that examined the financial records of the bank. And then we had someone else that looked at operations, and we had Jill Thagard, one of her team people. She was like the head of the treasury. Oh no, it was her boss, redheaded guy, Johnson. Jim Johnson. I'll think of that in a minute. I dealt with who this lady worked for. Jill Thagard, Treasury management person. She did all the wires and the wire. We actually had a real wire room. Right now, wire transfer is done in a bank. Today, they sit at a desktop and just, type into a computer. The actual wire room where you're connected to Skip and Snip and International, you can send billions across the Atlantic instantaneously. And this big, looks like a typewriter kind of a machine, but it was, 2 feet wide and 18 inches deep. All these different kinds of keys and stuff other than the QWERT, semicolon LKJH as you come across the keyboard. Oh boy. Now the wire room, if you're in the main bank of a real bank, like a Manhattan Bank or Royal, the Royal Trust Bank in Miami has a headquarters bank. The wire room, connected right to the United States government, the Treasury Department, and all the other major banks across the world. Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, they had a wire room. Anyway, the wire room was probably an 8 by 12 room where the wallpaper was 1/4-inch mesh of copper wire, ceiling, floor, all the walls, copper, mesh, grounded. So no signals, no radio signals, or electromagnetic interference, if you will, if you're one of those people that are familiar with magnetic interference, could infiltrate the Fed machine. Because that big typewriter, something, that's called a Fed machine. Because when you put numbers in there, it goes right to Washington, D.C. in the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. That's the main chamala of banking for the United States government. There you go, the Fed machine of the United States government. Now they had a whole building full of Fed machines in there because you couldn't just have one. You need 30 of them. But each major bank had a Fed machine in their facilities. But they were shielded from radio frequency or any other kind of, at least what they knew at the time, electromagnetic radiation. Because you couldn't have a Fed machine being compromised because, bad guys could empty out a lot of billions fast. So no, I had passwords, like 16-digit passwords. I'm lucky if I can remember a 6-digit password, much less 26 hexadecimal password that changes every 30 seconds. You have a communicator device that did nothing but change the passwords on the Fed machines, which the treasury manager of big banks had in their pockets. They'd whip that sucker out, and you had this incredibly long password. And before you could even say hello to a Fed machine, you had to type in this 26-digit hexadecimal password, which is Alfa Romeo, that's a car, Alpha, all kinds of special characters. Yep, H. Loy Anderson. H. Loy Anderson's bank connected to the Fed machine in Miami at the Royal Trust Bank. Now, H. Loy Anderson's bank on the island of Palm Beach was, nothing to sneeze at. Pretty serious bank. But see, he didn't need a Fed machine because they could just send information down to Miami, and we would deal with the Fed machine and send tens of millions of dollars to the Fed overnight, because all these little old retired ladies would open up so much when they'd move down to South Florida. They would bring with them big checkbooks, actually little checkbooks with big dollar balances. Oh, H. Loy Anderson. Oh my God, the little old ladies loved H. Loy Anderson. I understand you can house my mink stoles. Charles, would you go get the stoles out of the limousine? They didn't drive, they had limousines. Back in the day when people actually deserved limousines. They were generally Rolls-Royce limousines. I don't think Bentley was there yet. Oh boy. And Donald Jr. is dating H. Loy Anderson's daughter. And I think I remember watching H. Loy Anderson and his wife, who was a Palm Beach socialite, pushing the $1,000 stroller up and down the sidewalks of Worth Avenue. Back when you can do that before you get kidnapped. Yeah. Well, that little baby is now Donald Jr.'s number one squeeze, as they say in Manhattan. Yeah. She's a sweet young lady. I'm not, besmirching H. Lloyd Anderson's daughter. But, it was kind of the last of a breed of the Palm Beach social, the real deep Palm Beach social scene. Now, have, I forget what her name is, but you've seen her in the newsreels lately because Kimberly Guilfoyle, remember that name? Used to be on the 5, sitting over on the very left-hand side of the table where Judge Janine sits right now, who's quite a member of the 5. But Kimberly Guilfoyle had that seat, and she was, making 7 digits being on that show. Kind of like a Hollywood voluptuous kind of a look, and I don't know how else to describe it. All her physical attributes were, exaggerated, if you will. And that was Donald Jr.'s, fiancée for years. And she'd travel with him all over the place, and in Wyoming, and hunt, and shoot and fish and kayak and whatever the heck wealthy people do. Because after all, he's a billionaire all on his own, because his father's, President Trump is certainly a multi-billionaire, and all the kids are billionaires. They're all smart, sharp, people that learn from dad, so to speak. Ivanka's not exactly chump change either. Had her own fashion line, her own beauty aids, perfumes, you name it. Very attractive female specimen daughter of Donald Trump. All the Trumps, not all. You just know the main 4. You've met the granddaughter, right? Donald Jr.'s daughter plays golf with the president all the time. She's a scratch handicap woman golfer at the age of, 15 maybe, tops? She spoke at the Republican National Committee, says, "Hey, I want you all to know that my grandpa's really a regular guy, I sit on his lap when I was 8, and he's a marvelous grandpa, so you guys stop beating up on my grandpa. I play golf with him whenever he's down here." And she does, and she's a spectacular. She wants to be a woman's professional golfer, and she shall, because she's played golf on all the best golf courses on the planet. Her father owns half of them. Her grandfather owns half of them, yeah. And he's, it's kind of like fun watching all this stuff. And the politics, they all tear each other apart. But, underneath that cranky, Trump's a tough guy. You either publish or perish. You either do what you're going to say you do or get the hell out. This is not a retirement home. You were brought in here to do something. A specific task. Do it. So it'd be interesting. It'd be very... he's a tough guy. He went through a lot of cabinet members in his first term. Remember, there's only Grover Cleveland. You have to go back 129 years. Only one other time in our American history of 250 years, rounded, of presidencies. We have 47 presidencies, right? Trump is the current 47th president. The 46th president was Biden, right? He was running for president his entire life. He finally got it, somehow. Because the 45th president was Trump. So Trump was president, then for 4 years he wasn't president, and now here we are, we got Trump again. Because after 4 years of Biden, even the liberals in America said, you know what? we can't have another 4 years of Biden. And if we elect Kamala Harris, all the Obama people who are in the back room running the country are going to continue to run the country into the ground. Because socialism cannot stand next to an actual democracy. So they've got to, kind of like get rid of democracy and bring everybody down to where they're the same. You're not allowed to have socialites and all that, The Bolsheviks chased out all the aristocracy out of Russia, right? So you could have communism. You got to get rid of all the wealthy people who think, so to speak. That's not a fair thing to say, but the wealthy people could think and they could make a difference. Whereas someone that's thinking, that's in a factory, doesn't maybe have the opportunity to speak and be heard, Anyway, so you got to tear down democracy before you can have socialism, and you got to have socialism before you can have communism. You get it? That's all I know about world history, because I'm a scientist. I was like biology, chemistry, math, cryptogamic botany. I did that stuff. I couldn't remember all this world history stuff. I still can't. But when you get old enough, you watch the news enough, it kind of rubs off on you and say, oh, is that what they meant? In World War I or whatever the heck. I think, God damn it. I think I'd like to do high school over again. I missed out on world history. Yeah, I was too busy taking apart something in my lap. I'd bring these interesting little doodads which I'd take apart when I was in school supposed to be learning something else. Anyway, circling back to, where we are today at 9:34 a.m. About an hour later, and I didn't really get into a lot of what I want to talk about. All right, we got some confidential stuff to look at. So I can proudly say, if I get really excited about things, just so you know, when you get a little older, your blood oxygen level is something to pay attention to. 10 years ago, I didn't know. Well, I did, because I'm a biology student, a pre-med student. But most people, when they're in their 50s and they're healthy, blood oxygen? All they knew when they went to the doctor is, how's your hemoglobin? Oh yeah, you got 100% hemoglobin. Well, that is, the early vocabulary words for what they call today blood oxygen. The SO2 level on the screen up there, when you're on the bed, after you've had a heart attack and you got all these little graphy things going in green and yellow, and, alarms go off, when the heart stops. Well, one of those important figures up there, next to your pulse, is the SO2. And that is the, how much oxygen can be held by your corpuscles, your blood cells, also known as corpuscles. The hemoglobin within your red blood cells holds the oxygen, and then those red blood cells get circulated. They're in your blood, and they get pumped all around your body by the heart, through the lungs. You breathe in and out. Oxygen, and some nitrogen, by the way, gets absorbed by your blood, circulates around through your body, and delivers those oxygen molecules into your organs. Like your eyes, your skin, those are two organs. Your liver, your lungs. There's a couple more organs. Yes. Your alimentary canal. That's, your mouth, your throat, your esophagus, your stomach, your small intestines, your large intestines, and your anus. Not my anus, your anus. Well, all of that is your alimentary canal. Another one of those organs. But your blood oxygen, that SO2 level, is what, is because you have to, the medical people that are trying to pay attention to your physiology of your body, when you're in the hospital, or if you're home, you could put this little thing on your finger. I have it in the kitchen right now. And if I feel, you can. So how do you know when your blood oxygen is getting low? Because it's either normal or it's low or high. High, medium, low. Kind of like your oven. So it's high, it's like 100% hemoglobin. That means your hemoglobin. I was 100% hemoglobin for 50 years of my life. I remember when I was in the President Kennedy's health and fitness thing, in the 60s, early 60s, I placed number 4 in the state of New York in physical fitness. Can you imagine? They had like contests and stopwatches, and West Point was the final race. It's not actually a race. You do pull-ups, push-ups. You had to do 60 push-ups in 2 minutes. And we're talking about real ones. The push-ups you see on TV, they're not push-ups. Come on, you're going down halfway, all the way up, all the way down. A Marine would have his hands on the ground, pushing down the grass when I'm doing my push-ups on the big yard of West Point. And he counted every time you went down and then back up. That was a push-up. It starts from your chest touching his hand, and then your arms get fully extended. That's up. Not halfway up, all the way up. Down, all the way down, touch my hand, then all the way up. And the Marine Corps sergeant or something or other, they were like 12 of us from all over the state of New York, finalists in President Kennedy's health and whatever he called that, health and fitness effort. So you got all these kids all over the state of New York. And state of New York is not like Wyoming. We're talking about a lot of, I'm not knocking Wyoming other than the fact that, you get wide open spaces. Well, in New York State, there are some wide open spaces, like 3 of them. You got a lot of high density, a lot of people. You got some people have nothing better to do than doing push-ups, and so you're racing against pull-ups. You had to do 21 of those. I think they timed that also in 2 minutes. You're hanging from a bar. You got to pull your chin all the way over the bar, then all the way down. Pull up. Your chin has to go over the top of the bar, or it doesn't count. And you got these Marine sergeants watching you to make sure, you don't sneak in a half a pull-up, or you don't go 75% of the way down on a push-up. You got to go touch a person's hand that's on the floor of the gymnasium. You got to touch the back end of the sergeant's hand. That's a push up from that position. Anyway, pull-ups, push-ups, squat jumps. I forget how many you had to do with those. 6, I forget the number actually. Squat jumps. Hands behind the head. You had to squat down, one leg up, one leg down. The knee had to touch the grass. And then you jump up, and then you switch the legs, and then the other knee has to touch the grass. You can kind of figure that. You had to be straight up and down, hands behind your head. Fingers interwoven. You had to do 20 or 30 of those within a certain thing. And then one of the last things is you had to run up and back 100 yards or 200 yards. Anyway, they'd add all those points together, and there were probably 50 or 60 kids. They got shipped over from all over the New York State. It wasn't far for us because we lived on the North Shore of Long Island. I scored real high. West Point wanted they wanted me to. They had some of their people with the clipboards coming after me, saying, "Hey, we want this kid at West Point." I said, well, if you can get through mommy, if you can convince my mother, okay, because that's the last thing she wanted me to do was go in there for 4 years and then get shipped over to, some war place and get bombed up. Oh no, I don't know about that. So she kept me close by, deep in the trees in the college system. You're gonna be deep in the forest, so if something happens, you can go hide in the forest. Yeah, West Point was not one of them. People shoot at people that get out of West Point. Anyway, I'm kind of proud of that. Got a badge, and if you don't get first place, they don't know who you are. I was like fourth or fifth or something. It was pretty cool. I mean, I wasn't trying to win, actually. It just turned out that way. I did a lot better than I thought. I remember my high school, you got your gym teacher. The head of the gym department came over to me and says, "Are you James Wilson?" I said, "Yes, I am." Hey, he's like a military guy, right? The head of your gym school or whatever they called it, gymnasium people, all these gymnasts. He comes over to me and he says, "We want you to enter the New York State John F. Kennedy Presidential Physical Fitness Challenge." It was something like that. And I said, "You do?" He says, "Yes, we do. If we need your permission and your mother's permission." Everything. Your mother had to sign everything, right? They wouldn't let you do anything without her permission, particularly if you lived on the North Shore of Long Island. Because my mother would go down there and wring his neck if he tried to do something without her permission. And he knew it. So, would you please ask your mother, could you please have her sign this permission slip? He didn't even want to face her. Well, she was a sharp one. Yeah, I mean, she didn't beat everybody up, but she'd look at you, and you'd be 2 inches shorter than you thought you were. If you stared her down, and you were 6 feet tall. You came out of there, 5'9" maybe. Yeah, she could stare you down. She was a smart one. She was the valedictorian of the Jamaica High School when the graduating class was 2,500. It's pretty hard to be the number one student when you're graduating with 2,500 other kids. In Jamaica, Queens, a lot of, if you look around and you hear people and political people and people that are the head and own stuff. They come from, Brooklyn, Queens, Jamaica, Queens, Brooklyn. I mean, it's unbelievable. The number of people that come from that area. Just, the head of the Secret Service, Bongino, where'd he come from? Yep, Brooklyn, Queens. J-Lo, the singer, where'd she come from? Yep, Brooklyn, Queens, Jamaica. I mean, it almost matter, Lady Gaga, for God's sakes. Brooklyn, Queens. Oh, you talk about a success story. Woo. She's worth $1 billion probably, and she's some homeless little, ethnic, not a very attractive young girl. But she made herself attractive. She made herself valuable. She created value. Masterfully. She wasn't some, homecoming queen type person that wouldn't, she's a tough cookie. She came up from a hard neighborhood. You know, we all did, so to speak. My father did. I had the benefit of having my father cut the weeds in front of me. I could walk. You know, when you got to cut your way through the weeds, you know, that's the first line of defense. You know, it could be your parents, your grandparents. Well, all those people that come up through Brooklyn, boy, I tell you what, you had to know when to duck. Yes, someone throws some stones, you had to be fast at ducking. Oh God! Remember when President Bush was giving a news conference over there in the land of Iraqi, and one of the news people, you know, he's behind the microphones, and then you have all these newsies that are in front of him, and he had to duck when the news guys threw a shoe at him. Well, over in that part of the world, when they throw a shoe at you, that's not applause. That's the opposite of applause. And he ducked good. Boy, I'll tell you what. It was like someone was throwing a baseball at him, and he ducked. He knew he couldn't catch it, so he ducked. Oh, Lord. Isn't that funny? I thought it was funny. All right. We have to, you know, the one thing that I do is I take these. All right, so we were talking about SO2. I'm really mad because, you know, when you get over a certain age, your SO2 level is something. I'm circling back to that little sub-story. You have to pay attention to your blood sugar. Well, if I get aggravated, and I'm not aggravated right now, but if I were to run around this building I live in, which is a 9-story building, that's two blocks, a 2-block rectangle, the shaped. See that piece of paper on my screen? The building is shaped like that, a rectangle. It goes up 150 feet, 9 stories. Now, if I, you know, and it's 2 square blocks. You know, if a block in downtown Boca Raton is square, it probably is. So you take 2 of those squares, put them together, no street in the middle. That's the shape of our building. So if I were to run around that building twice, on the ground, you know, on the sidewalks, I'd be winded. You know what it's like to be winded? It's like playing a hard set of tennis. You kind of lean over, your hands on your knees, and you're trying to catch your breath. Okay, well, people that have blood oxygen issues have to catch their breath, you know, when they're eating breakfast. Forget about running around the building twice. So I'm in the early stages of needing some oxygen help. So wouldn't it be nicer, instead of having 20% oxygen that you could take a breath with, you had 40 or 50% oxygen? That means for every breath, you're kind of like getting 2 breaths. So that'll get you caught up a little quicker. So that way more oxygen gets in your blood. So that means your blood oxygen goes up. And then if you were on one of those graphs, your SO2 level would be high. You know, like 99. I don't think it actually registers 100. You know, with these things they slip on your finger when you just had your second heart attack. Anytime you go in a hospital, they stick the SO2 gauge on your, and it actually reads through your fingernail, if you were wondering. You'd think it would read through the tender of your finger. Nope. It's a laser light emitting diode that shoots through your fingernail, because your fingernail has a let me cut that off. There we go. Okay. Excuse me, I was someone calling my iPad. Yeah, these robotics calling. They don't know a phone from an iPad. And if you have a cellular system iPad, it has a data line number, which is like a phone number, but it receives data instead of phone calls. But a robocall doesn't know the difference. It's just a phone number. He calls it. Marilyn's iPad was ringing like a phone. I just cut it off. So anyway, SO2 level gets important. So because airline, so my doctor says, oh, by the way, James, I had my annual physical a couple of months ago, and he looks at me. Dr. Lubin says, Jimmy, you're grounded. I said, what? You mean I can't go out for dinner tomorrow night? No. Yeah, I'm like Mr. Funny here. He says, no airline travel unless you have a portable oxygen concentrator, also known as a POC. Really? What the hell was that? No, I knew what it was. Because my doctor warned me a year earlier that a POC is probably in your destiny. And of course, I got home and looked everything up, and I said, what the hell is a POC? So, it's a portable oxygen concentrator. It's something that takes your ambient air, which has 20% oxygen, and it concentrates it, where you could have 70 or 80%, 95% oxygen coming out of this little tube, which you place near your nose, and you breathe that in, which gives you higher levels of oxygen that are normally present when you just breathe air when you're walking around the building or out playing golf or something. So sometimes you see these people with, the oxygen thingy that they put around your ears, and two little doodads hang below your nostrils. That's where the oxygen comes out through the hose that's connected to an oxygen port that's next to almost every bedroom in a modern hospital. Well, you have the same kind of an oxygen thingy that you can put around your ears, and where you have the two little doodads that come near your nose, and the portable or the hospital oxygen. But the portable oxygen concentrator has a hose, just like you see in a hospital, and it has a little thing that wraps around your ears, two little doodads next to your nose, pumps out 97% oxygen. So when you breathe in, that 95% oxygen is then mixed, in a sense, with the ambient air that you're breathing in. So the resultant oxygen concentration in your lungs, enters the lungs at like 50% or 40%, which is at least twice the concentration if you were just breathing in air, when you're sitting out on the front lawn. Yeah. So you have to have a device and if you're flying, so what's bringing this up is there are 75% of our family members here in southern Palm Beach County are flying up to the Washington, D.C. area, the heart of liberalism in Maryland. You got some crazy congressmen that come out of Maryland, I tell you. You see them on TV almost every night, banging the drums of anti-Trumpism. I will not wear my Trump underwear when I travel to Maryland, in case I end up tripping and falling and end up in a hospital and they cut off your pants and they see Trump under my pants and say, close them up, get him out of here. Put him out back. We'll see if we have time to see Mr. Wilson. Yeah, no. I will not wear my Trump t-shirts to Maryland. Yeah, we'll be in sworn secrecy. Anyway, so my doctor looks at me and says, I'm going to have to ground you. I said, what does that mean? It means you can't fly unless you have a portable oxygen concentrator. Because with the stress of flying and the pressurized cabin and all that stuff, the FAA looks at the medical community and says, you better not let these patients show up on my airplane, the FAA says, unless they have a device so they don't fall off on their face, and drop dead on my airplanes. So the FAA has required essentially, indirectly required that the medical community do everything possible so that anybody that's going to fly domestically has to be properly equipped with a portable oxygen concentrator. So, what does that mean? You have to have a form. Here is a permission slip. I am showing you a permission slip. You see check marks everywhere. What's the physician's name? What's his address? What's his hat size? What's his city, state, phone number, fax number? You know, like the pilot is going to send this guy a fax. Give me a break. But they want his fax number. What country is he from or region? City, state. Oh my God. What is his NPI number? Yeah, you gotta put that number on there somewhere. His official, 10-digit number or something. All right, how many liters per minute does he need to have? Who's your patient? There you go, you see. There's Jimmy. How many liters per minute does he require? 1 liter a minute, POC. And then the first box. POC is medically necessary. What is POC? Portable oxygen concentrator. There has to be an acronym for every damn thing. So the POC is medically necessary during all phases of the flight, including taxi, takeoff, and landing. Well, you bet your ass. I want that oxygen, baby, when I'm taking off, because that's the most dangerous part of flying. Getting that sucker up to 400 miles an hour and getting up to higher than 20,000 feet. That is the most important thing to do when you're trying to fly an aircraft, because the wings don't flap. The wings need airspeed going over the wings. That gives it lift. So we need to get up and out of here and get up to 400 miles an hour ASAP and get the hell out of all the rest of the air traffic. So that's called white knuckling it as a passenger. You grip your armrests tight and your knuckles turn white because you've squeezed all the blood out of your knuckles. And that's the time when you need your oxygen. Yeah. So my doctor says, when you get a little stressed, you drop under 80 on your SO2 levels. I said, yeah, I noticed that on the chart. That's probably need a little help if I get stressed out, because you drop under 70, you're probably face down in the mud somewhere. So 69 to 99, no. 79 to 99, that 20% scale is where you gotta be. And I say gotta be, because you want to be over 90. But if you get under 90, but you're above 80, then the hospital probably isn't going to let you out without an oxygen cylinder pulled behind you. Anyway. So I have to have the first box, the top box, checked. There's 3 boxes. So it's medically necessary all the damn time. Or it's medically necessary only doing, the amount of flight when the pilot says common electronic devices are authorized by the crew. That means tray tables and your iPhone's off, but when you're allowed to use your personal communication devices, that's when I can use that's box number 2. Or box number 3 is, it's intermittently necessary during flight, but not during taxi, takeoff, and landing. So you got the 3 levels of use. So we need to get the crew aware that I may use oxygen all the damn time, even when we're sitting here in the runway, not even moving, because we don't want Jimmy to totally pass out sitting in the seat, dribbling on the person sitting next to me. I'm trying to be, I'm trying to be funny with this because it's so annoying. Because, you have to deal with this crap. So now I have to send this POC form to my doctor. He's got to sign it. There's 3 little boxes for Jimmy. I certify that, meaning the doctor certifies that yours truly needs 1 liter a minute of the POC during taxi, takeoff, flight, and landing. And the doctor signs, I swear to God, and everybody, and it's an FAA approved form, and of course every airline has their own cockamamie form. Yeah, so I need this in duplicate because I'm flying to Washington Airport, probably, Baltimore Airport, Dulles Airport, Washington National Airport, one of those 3. I forget which one we're flying into. Marilyn, myself, and Daniel. Brennan can't go because he is one of the chefs at the Royal Palm Yacht and Country Club, and it's a community of 700 families, a gated community with armed gated. Yeah, we got all these big yachts. Well, the people that live in that community, it's kind of like the Boca Raton version of the island of Palm Beach, all wrapped up into one gated community. Royal Palm Yacht and Country Club. Access to the ocean. You got big yachts in there. You don't have 96-foot boats. You have 103-foot boats. If you're going to be that close to 100, get over 100. Yes, sir. 50 meters. 100 meters. No. 50-foot boats, 100-foot boats. I used to joke to my friends, if the boat does not have a 60-inch flat screen TV and a washer and a dryer below, the boat's too small for me. Oh yeah, no. I don't want to be on one of these 38-foot boats that slap up and down in the ocean as they zoom through 5-foot waves. No. I'll stay on the intercoastal. I don't want to go out into the Atlantic Ocean unless this sucker is 75 feet or bigger. So, Jim Moran's boat, remember JM Lexus, Jim Moran? A wealthy guy, made about $20 million a month. How about that? 30 years ago, we made $20 million a month. Started from being a car salesman, for God's sakes. Anyway, he had a 150-foot boat. I like that boat. We were out on it 4 or 5 times. Yeah, cocktail parties, boy. Stand on the back of that boat, you think you're on an ocean liner. Very nice. You have a crew of 10, probably. Of course, it's catered, and you got, mountains of shrimp and lobster tails. The foo-foo class of Boca Raton. I don't know why we didn't deserve to be on the boat, but we knew people that knew people. And I had clients. I was a banker, and I had clients that had money. I didn't have any money. I was one of the bankers that was just trying to earn a living in the banking world. I did okay. I'm not complaining. But some of my clients were, very significant net worths, on the page 1 of the deposit list. 30 years ago, if you got $10 million in cash in your bank, in cash, that's after tax, like real money, like that's in a checkbook, and you didn't win the lottery, you just kind of like earned it. That's the kind of people that live in South Florida, and they need banking needs. Marilyn, my wife, has a one of the finest financial center managers. Everybody in a financial center reports to her one way or the other. So she knows all these people in the foo-foo class. I was kind of like a technician. I made, 10, 20, $30 million loans. So, that's exciting. It was exciting. I did the construction loan, for God's sakes, on Joe Robbie Stadium. Not many people. There were only 5 other bankers that did that, but Southeast Bank originated it, and I had to sign off on that loan, albeit a relatively junior officer compared to what I became, but I had to sign up on it nonetheless. They actually delayed the project because I took over the Tampa market, and I had to sign off on that. It was the last line on this front page form. Of course, Southeast had a form for everything, and Southeast Bank, marvelous bank. I had to sign off on the Joe Robbie Stadium. Played 5 Super Bowls in that stadium. Yeah, Jimmy did the construction loan. I mean, there were a lot of people that worked on that loan other than me. The most effort I did on that is I had to sign the form because I was in charge of region number 3, which is Tampa, Clearwater, St. Petersburg, and the 17 surrounding counties. And there were people in that whole Joe Robbie Stadium, Joe Robbie estate, and the way we had to participate, the banks within the Southeast Bank, where I had to sign off on it. Yes, sir. That was early 80s. That's a few years later, right? 40 years ago? Yep. That's kind of fun when you're dealing with the architects and engineers of you're building a stadium. That's today a multi-billion-dollar facility. One facility. That's kind of a nice thing to have in your background. That's a resume item that wakes somebody up. Of course, right now, no one wants to even see my goddamn resume. That's okay. That's why I'm talking to you guys out here, to motivate you to go do something exciting. Oh my God, talking about a mess. Elon Musk has got himself in a real mess because he's part of the Doge and the Trump. Well, if you're near Trump, helping Trump, anything to do with Trump, you're on the wrong side of. And remember, he was on the right side because he was making cars in the Green New Deal. Oh my God, he and Biden, whew, what a deal. But Elon Musk looked at the public information available about the operation of the United States government over the last 20 years. He's a smart guy. He's, a real smart guy. And smart people like Elon Musk attract a lot of other smart people. So the amazing thing about Elon Musk, he didn't sit down there and personally do the architecture of the rocket ships that are going up into space and all this stuff. But you know what? He's got a building full of aeronautical engineers and metallurgy. I did a lot of metallurgy. A little tiny bit of metallurgy compared to them. Certain metals mixed with certain other metals produce even stronger, better metals. And there's a lot of metallurgy, very precise metallurgy, that's, the making of alloys, okay? That's because you have to make the chamber, when the liquid oxygen, when the oxygen that comes from liquid oxygen and the methane that comes from liquid methane and they meet in the firing chamber, or you hear the thing, chamber pressures nominal. That's what I'm talking about. Inside that chamber, where that spark happens, it's not exactly a spark plug, but something ignites that mixture of methane and oxygen, and it fires off, it's like a controlled explosion, a continuous explosion, so to speak, where the liquid oxygen and the liquid methane are pumped into this chamber that's on fire, that's exploding, so to speak, but instead of it going boom, it just goes and it all comes out the end, out of this funnel looking thing, and creates a thrust, because Newton's law says, the equal and opposite direction of an action. So the thrust goes out one end and pushes the top end of the chamber pressures, remember? And that's what gives the rocket the upward force. It's opposite from all the flame coming at the bottom end of that, which is what I called a controlled explosion. Now, if the chamber was sealed, it'd go boom. But it's not sealed. It's opened on the bottom. It opens up into this throat, and all this fire, an explosion comes out of the bottom of the Raptor engine. And we've seen 33 of those Raptor engines all bolted together on the bottom end of, Elon's Starship, he calls it. That's like a 40-story office building, 30 feet in diameter, going straight up. The fuel weighs 10 million pounds. Forget about the device. The booster weighs, empty 600,000 pounds. When that thing lands back on the thing that catches it midair. That's 550,000 pound, 30-foot diameter, 40-story office building. There you go. Stuff that in your pipe and smoke it. The fuel weighs 10 million pounds. They give you an idea. You don't have any sense of how big that is when you see it on TV. I mean, it looks like something you see on a science fiction movie or something rather. But when you stand next to one of those things, you're like a itty bitty little, you look like a bug on the bottom of that picture. Yeah, it's big. You don't have any idea how big that thing is. It stands 40 stories tall with the top part. The top part's like 130 feet, and then do the math on what the bottom part is. But that bottom part is 550,000 pounds when it's landing in those calipers. I think it's had 2 or 3 successful land. I mean, that's like magic. For that thing to come back out of space, it's going, 10 times faster than a speeding bullet, this huge thing, and then comes back to Earth, like a big rock. It's really heavy. It doesn't have any wings, right? So it ain't going to glide back to Earth. It's going to come straight down. It has to flip over. They got this flip maneuver, they call it. And then it back burns, and then, you got like 8 of those engines that go full throttle to slow it down, so when it hits Earth, it doesn't go splat. And then it gently just falls right down in those calipers, and it's no shock waves going through that steel thing that catches it. It just settled right down on there. No rubber grommets. It's like the magic of artificial intelligence. the magic of coding. You got all kinds of programming going on. What is it programming? What's happening? Well, those engines are on what is known as a gimbal, and the gimbal directs the engines, left and right and up and down. There's a whole range of, they actually test the gimbals. You see those engines moving around. Those engines are, like 8 foot tall, and you see them rotating around, they're just the nozzle part. So when you see the gimbals moving around, when they have a shot from underneath the rocket, there's like 13 of those engines are on a gimbal. And then the inner 3, they're on another special kind of a gimbal that has a little wider gamut of movement. Delta. Now, all this stuff gets engineered. I mean, when they make this stuff, it's all on plan paper. It's all drawn out with computer aided. I mean, the amount of, energy necessary, mental energy, to create these things is, it's unbelievable. They have a city full of the smartest people on the planet that would love to work with, Elon Musk and his crew, and the president and that's actually running SpaceX right now. Her name is, listen to this name, Gwendolyn. That's okay, Gwendolyn Shotwell. What a last name to be president of the most known rocket company in the world. Her last name is Shotwell. Yeah, boy, it's great. She's a sharp one. They're all sharp. That's the exciting thing about, Elon Musk. He's not hand doing all this stuff himself. He's got a building full of the best minds in the world. They're trying to get, from India, all these different countries. They're smart people all over the place. Some places have more smart people than others. Jeez. Oh, God. I got stories. But that's what makes Tesla company. And, he took a bunch of engineers from the Tesla company, threw them over and, being a little bit of a wise guy. But, his initial engineering crew came from Tesla to start SpaceX. 15 years ago, whatever it was. 12 years ago. And then from there, he sat down with these guys and they did everything I'm just kind of like talking about. And wham, they're shooting, they're going to have major installation on the moon. From what little I know about all that. Because they're going to stage they're going to go to Mars, okay? It has an all carbon dioxide atmosphere, so that doesn't work for us. We breathe in carbon dioxide, we choke. Carbon monoxide, you go to sleep and die. But carbon dioxide, you would gag with a breath of carbon dioxide. And you could start coughing, if you were put in a room with all carbon dioxide. Now, if there's a little bit of carbon dioxide, the plants love it. We breathe out carbon dioxide. Plants and trees breathe in carbon dioxide. How about that for opposites attract? Our biology system, our ecosystem is pretty, whoever figured this out was pretty smart. I don't know if we had any help or not. We could have help from our religious, or we could have had help from extraterrestrial help. Who knows? Anyway, so for me to not be grounded, I need a POC. Well, I have the POC. Well, guess what? It's a piece of crap. It's not a piece of crap. It's, in the world of Medicare, and, you have the doctor, he signs a prescription. The prescription goes to a Medicare provider, and then the Medicare approved provider, then provides you with the DME. What's the DME? Remember, more acronyms here. I figured this out in the last 60 days. It's really... Anyway, so I'm talking to my insurance agent. I say, we need a POC, that's on the list of the DMEs. Oh, really? What the hell's that? Well, the DME is durable medical equipment. Yes, durable. Not just a hypodermic needle or a hypodermic needle. We need a DME, durable medical equipment, and it has to be FAA approved, of course. It has to go through the medical approval. It has to go through the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. Because you can't have big, loud, noisy, dangerous equipment on an aircraft with all our other fee-paying, right? Passengers, I obviously agree with that. So my doctor says you're grounded unless you have one of these. And so my medical provider provided equipment. I happen to have the service manual here because I intend to know. I do know exactly how it's made and what has to be done to service it. Not that the patients have to service it, but I'm one of these guys that like to take things apart. Anyway, so I have my Freestyle Comfort Care portable oxygen concentrator use and service manual right here in this little plastic thing. And of course, there's a fax to my doctor saying, oh crap. So my doctor and I, when he said you may be grounded last year, my doctor and I, for the first 2 months of this year, determined what durable medical equipment I need so that I'm not grounded, according to FAA rules. So we decided on a certain piece of equipment, but the medical provider provided different equipment. It's okay, I wrote, let's see. Yeah, I wrote a text message to Marilyn. I said, the Inogen equipment specified is newer. It's 40% lighter, 30% quieter, and 20% smaller, and produces 125% more oxygen than what the DME that was provided by the medical provider. Oh God, can you imagine? And it's it's something the size of a thick briefcase. Weighs 5 pounds. It should weigh 3. But it's a $5,000 item. That's not exactly chump change. $5,000 item to produce 1 liter a minute of oxygen to support Jimmy to keep him from falling flat on his face in case he gets too stressed out with the flight. Pilot, please, it's crashing. Oh boy. I'll control myself. If I stay calm, I'm not even going to turn it on. You push one button, it's on. So it's not like I tested it out again last night. I checked out the battery. It's got a lithium-ion battery. It runs so long. And the FAA decides, what they say? This durable medical equipment with the prescribed amount of liters per minute that you need of oxygen so you don't go fat on your face. The battery has to last at least as long as the flight and at least as long as you might have a delay of 3 hours because You're either on the runway landing or on the runway taking off. You may be stuck on the runway for 3 hours. That's an FAA rule. It used to be you could be stuck on the runway forever, but they cut it to 3 hours because people were starting to pass out, in the cockpits or in the passenger thing. Oh boy. So that's my story. So the DME I got, the durable medical equipment, is not as specified by my doctor because he wrote in the prescription. Let's see, we'll go up here. There's the messaging here. See, here's prescription, James Wilson, that's me. There's my birth date, Inogen G5 concentrator. Hello? G like good. Up to 3 liters a minute. Can you imagine? This stupid thing, they gave me 1 liter a minute, and that's on high blast. And, my doctor and I'm not a technical guy, so I went on a research project to make sure we did this right. What the heck? It's only your life at stake. So here's what it looks like. See, it's like a thick briefcase. Come on, baby. There we go. There it is. There's a picture of it hanging on this guy's shoulder. It looks just exactly like that. And that weighs 3 pounds. But, when you got something 3 pounds that's hanging from your neck like that, you see how it's putting a crease in his shirt? Now, this is a picture from a brochure, so they made it look like it's a piece of nothing. See the thing around his nose there? Those are the cannulas that actually emit the oxygen. So when you breathe in, this little thing on his shoulder knows that you're breathing in because the pressure, there's a low pressure created in that pipe. It tells the durable medical equipment, here, let's throw a little O2 into this guy. So every time you breathe in, this thing goes poof. Literally, it's not a constant flow, it's a pulse. Yeah. So that's it. Anyway, they provided equipment that's not prescribed. I mean, it's kind of like, it's not like it would be, like a generic drug. It's not that. It's just that when you finally get down through the Medicare and what they're willing to pay and all that kind of stuff, the provider can give, whatever, is medically sufficient. So they give you something that's medically sufficient, but the sucker's twice the size, it makes twice the noise, and it produces half the amount of oxygen. Yep, sounds like Medicare approved to me, and costs the same amount of money. How about that? It's like 10% difference in the outlay for the equipment. So I told Robin, I said, look, it's medically sufficient. It's durable medical equipment. It is FAA approved. Hopefully I'm never even going to have to turn it on during the flight, so it's like carrying like a little insurance policy, because I'm borderline grounded, so to speak. Because I'm not actually walking around all day long, sucking on O2. If I were to run down the hallway to put a 40-pound bag of trash down the trash chute, I'd probably come back and have to sit down on the couch and, rest a minute. Well, now I have to rest a minute and, suck on a little oxygen. Just to make you catch up a little faster, that's all. Just like losing your breath, so to speak. It's exactly what it is. So you have a little oxygen help so that you recover quicker from your running around the building or walking down to the trash chute with a 30-pound bag of trash. I mean, I've done it. I've felt it. It's a 66. I've counted the steps. In case there's a fire, I know how many steps it is from there to there. It is 66 normal steps from my front door to the trash chute room. Make a right turn, go down 66 steps. You can do it with your eyes closed. I've counted it out. Yeah, what the heck? You got to think of all these things. Who the hell knows? There's fire stairs. 60 steps from my front door, going towards the trash chute. Anyway, so if I went down that trash chute room with a 30-pound bag of trash, carrying it 66 steps, open the door, open the chute tube, drop the bag into, massage the bag so it goes into the chute, and then walk all the way back, come to my front door, and sit down on the couch, I'd be breathing, a little more aggressive breathing than just sitting around watching the news. So doctor says, you don't want to keep doing that. You want to give yourself a little help. It's like taking a nice sip of water. You don't want to be dehydrated either. And you want to make sure you're oxygenated. And you want to make sure you're not dehydrated. How about those two big words? So every once in a while I got to turn on the O2. And, oftentimes you need to take a sip of water because you don't want to be dehydrated. I mean, everybody does that. Anyway, so my durable medical equipment didn't match the levels specified in the durable medical equipment that the medical provider provided. It's like the doctor says you need crutches, and Medicare gives you one. The man needs a crutch. That's all you get is one. You can get by with one. That's good enough for us. I mean, that's how these big government agencies, they just don't. They think numbers. They don't think, I don't know. They don't think enough. Put it that way. Or they don't, as Elon Musk, they don't care. Oh yeah, they'll hand out $55 million of Gaza participants for prophylactics. What? We're giving the Gaza Strip, Hezbollah people, we're giving them $55 million for prophylactics? What? Jesus. You can't even see their women from under the berthas and all that. I mean, God. Yeah, right. We're going to send $55 million worth of Trojan rubbers, to those people. No. I mean, that's the stuff they're finding. That's, when when Elon Musk and his band of 100 high IQ people, he's got a bunch of his smart guys that work in Tesla and SpaceX, and he grabbed, 50 from each company, showed up in Washington with 100 of them, and they're all, they're like on the financial side. There's a lot of financing that happens when you're screwing around with rockets and buying, billions of dollars worth of liquid oxygen. And I mean, there's a lot of dollars flowing all over through these companies. I mean, you see the factories that Tesla have. They're just, if you're not awestruck by, you need a tram ride. You can't walk it. It'd take you all, 2 days. So they have trams, like at Walt Disney World. And periodically they give you a tour of, a Tesla car factory. I mean, it's unbelievable what that's like. So that's the machine. That's what the Tesla people say, the machine that makes the machines. The cars are the machines. The factory is a big machine that makes the machines. And the factory is 95% totally automated. It's all, all this robotics. All, these big things that pick up this and put that, they put them together, and, they go this way and they go that way and they move all around and all this stuff. There's like, 1,000 robots. These are, we're not talking about humanoid robots. We're talking about huge mechanical, welding robots and big, multi-thousand pound presses and aluminum metal cutting stations. And, if you see the raw materials coming in one end, and every 45 seconds, a Tesla car is coming at the other end. How the hell does that happen? They're wiping, they have guys, like the final stage of the Tesla factory experience is where a guy has a cloth in his hand and he's wiping down the edges to make sure the seams are all properly aligned and there's enough gloss and polish to the paint job. And, on the other side of the factory, it's not even a bucket of bolts. They make their own bolts. They literally manufacture every damn thing that's in the car. Whereas the Chevrolet, not complaining, they have a factory line, but there's a lot of other parts manufacturers that make the pieces that comprise a Cadillac, for example. And you got all these, you got a company that makes the light bulbs. You got a company that makes this bolt, this screw, that screw. There's like 8,000 or 9,000 pieces in a car. I think when Tesla started making Teslas, they're like 8,000 pieces. So the magic is in manufacturing is cut down on the number of pieces. That doesn't mean leave out a piece. It means see if you can combine a piece. He has some big presses that with one big press stamp of liquid metal alloy, whatever, it eliminates 179 pieces. And, welding, and that's eliminated. So he's got the 4 big pieces. The front 2 pieces and the back 2 pieces. That's 4 big stamping. It eliminates, like 800 or 900 pieces with those 4 pieces. That's how you figure out how to manufacture and cut down the cost so we can have a $40,000 electric car instead of a $75,000. His first Tesla cars are $80,000 a pop. Well, everybody can't afford an $80,000 car. A lot of these people live in $80,000 houses. I'm not being complaining, I'm just saying everybody's a big social strata we have in our country, and those are old numbers, by the way. That $80,000 car is now $140 because of inflation and this and that. Anyway, so Tesla wants to have a $25,000 car so it can compete with a Honda Accord. We were driving Honda Accords for 20 years or whatever, lots of years. Our kids had Honda Accords, we had Honda Accords. Geez, marvelous car. Honda makes a magnificent, let's say a real nice, commuter car. It's not a big Cadillac. It's a smaller, but really well made. Hats off to Honda. Those people make a really magnificent car. There are a lot of good car companies today with ICE engines, internal combustion engines. And they're just starting to, come around to the electric world because electric is where it's at. You can't have all these cars emitting all these fumes. They're poisoning our own atmosphere. Come on. When you're behind one of those 18-wheelers in it and you're stuck in traffic and all of a sudden traffic now can move 3 miles an hour and that big diesel 18-wheeler 3 car lengths in front of you, he steps on his accelerator pedal, this big fume of black smoke comes out of that smokestack, and it's we're breathing this. It gets diluted by the time it comes up, but you can smell that half-burnt diesel fuel, and you can't just keep doing that. We're ruining our atmosphere. with all these heavy metals, and you wonder why people are, dying of cancer and everything. We're poisoning our air. We're poisoning our food. We're poisoning our water. Because all those poisons that we're throwing in our atmosphere end up in our aquifer because it rains. Remember, hello? Rain drops through the atmosphere, and all those heavy metals and all that crap that's coming out of the 18-wheeler and out of the back end of 50 million cars, all that rain is then soaking our mountains and our streams and our oceans with heavy metals and all those poisons that are coming out of our exhaust pipes of our internal combustion engine cars. Now, that's a magical, wonderful thing that's going on with the internal combustion engine that are in the front of those cars. Just think of it. It took us away from the horse and carry stage back in 1905, right? Boy, the horse and carry people hated the Ford Motor Company. They were like competitors because they were basically putting them out of business. How many horse and carriages you see floating around now? They're in museums without the horses, with plaster of Paris horses in museums. The horse and buggy, that's the way we got around. And in 1901, 1899, and 1875, you had these big wooden, remember the stage coaches that went out west with the families in it when everyone was moving west? Or from the west? Nah, they were going west, baby. They was heading out to Colorado and New Mexico and California and all that, and on their station, those wagons, those big stage coaches, yeah. And the horse and buggies in the big cities, bringing the businessmen to their offices every morning. They'd tie up the horses along Madison Avenue. I mean, you look at some of the movies and read. I mean, reading is an exciting thing. You can take yourself right back to those days. Oh, the horse and buggies. The Ford Motor Company was not appreciated because they were replacing horse and buggies with these sealed up little buggy things with a noisy little guy in the front or the back running off, a couple of gallons of gasoline. Yeah. The beginning of the internal combustion engine, 2-cylinder engines. You go in the front and you'd hand crank it. They didn't have starters and batteries, and they had them, but they didn't figure out how to do that. And then it didn't take them long to figure it out because you didn't really crank you needed someone strong with you that could crank it. So the livery people that tied up your horse and buggy, it was a new little bunch of people that were created. These livery managers were then service managers for the very small internal combustion engines that were in the front of what looked like a horse and buggy with no horse. Why do you think they came up with horsepower? I mean, you think of that word, the etymology of the word horsepower. Now, is that really a 400 horsepower engine really mean it's like you had 400 horses up front? No, you're being a little too literal. But horsepower was like, what did it take to replace a horse? That's part of the etymology of that word. It's not all of it, but it's a piece. Anyway, so now we're dealing with electric motors. Marilyn and I just started with our first electric car. We got a Tesla Model Y 4 years ago with my my thinking about such things for it took about 5 years of trying to figure out all about this electric car stuff, because there wasn't much to think about, because Tesla was really, you had it's a shame, the Toyota company, what was their first electric car, like 20 years ago, the Prius. Now, to me, that looked like a Campbell soup can with 4 wheels. I mean, if they could have invented the ugliest looking, piece of technology. I mean, there was a lot of interesting things going on in that Prius. Even today, they finally decided, let's see if we can make it look good looking. Why does it have to look stupid looking to be an electric car? I mean, that's exactly what Tesla's. Those designers, Franz von Haushausen, that's his name. It's taken me about 6 weeks to figure out how to say his name. And Elon Musk, they got together 12 years ago and said, or Elon Musk got a hold of Haushausen, Franz von Haushausen, and said, we need to make a car. You need to design a car that looks good. Okay? I'm not interested in making another, pardon the expression, a Prius-looking car. Can't we make it like a good-looking car? You see that Mercedes-Benz four-door sedan? Can't you make it look like better than that? But, somewhat like that? So the transition to electric is enough. Let's not change the creature comforts to the point where it's, we want a good suspension. We want to be able to go fast, like you step on the accelerator in a gas engine with a Cadillac with 350 horsepower. Pardon the horses. We need some power with the electric motors. We need to come up with some batteries that work. And, have the right technology. You can't use lead acid batteries. They're too damn heavy. So, what are we going to do? So they worked it out. They figured it out. You know what they did with the batteries? I mean, these guys are like smart guys, but they didn't actually engineer the battery. They figured, why reinvent the wheel, okay, so to speak. So over in Europe, they have a lithium-ion battery that's the size of my thumb here, if I can straighten it out. It's about that thick, a little bit longer. Here it is. This is not one. So, whoops, sorry. I just banged my boom microphone. It's hanging right here in my face. Let's go full screen here, folks, because Jimmy needs to talk about this. So here's the battery. There's my thumbs. Here's a little bit. So the AA battery. Well, over in Europe, they don't have flashlights. They have torches. Because back in the day, you used to carry a torch, walking around with this flaming, thing on a stick. They called it a torch. Well, so when they started making what we call flashlights, they used to call them, they do call them torches. Well, inside the torch, inside the torch, here's one. Oh, maybe I have one in here. Oh, let's unscrew this. I'm sorry. Yes. I'm on the faculty at FAU, so I'm used to talking. So this right here is exactly what I'm talking about. This battery right here is bigger than a AA. It's about more than twice the volume of the typical double. I don't have one of those. I don't have one of those laying around here, I don't think. I have to look around at all my little devices. But see, this is the torch. It's now a 3-piece torch. And inside there is just one of these. Whereas the little torches, the little flashlights, this is considered a small flashlight, in European terms. But it's got a nice big head on it and a very strong light-emitting diode for the flash for the bulb. It's not a filament. It's a light-emitting diode that emits a lot of white light, and it converts 25% of this energy into light. That is a nice change of energy. You know, Einstein's theory of relativity kind of thing. You convert one kind of energy into another. Well, this torch, this flashlight, is converting chemistry from lithium chemistry into electrons, electricity, that flow through this light-emitting diode I'm tapping on here to produce where it's 25% efficient in creating light, and it's 75% inefficient in emitting other forms of energy that aren't light. Well, the flashlight is supposed to produce light. Well, even the best one today, or, you know, when they make flashlights, it's only 25% efficient in converting electric energy into light energy. The changing of as a physical chemist. This battery right here, I'm looping back into the Tesla story, is made by Panasonic. For some reason or other, the Panasonic company engineered this battery that's called the 18650. This is an 18650 cell. It produces 3.7 volts from the middle terminal, you know, and the back terminal in the back. It's an 18650 cell. What does that mean? So why'd they call it that? Because it's 18 millimeters in diameter and 65 millimeters in length. So if you measure this with a caliper, and I showed you a caliper here the other day when I was measuring the width of this iPad. 18 millimeters in diameter, 65 millimeters in length, top to bottom. They call this an 18650. They've added a zero to it, so it's an 18650 cell. So, in the wisdom of Tesla, they said, you know what, lead acid battery ain't going to work. It's too heavy. Plus you got all this lead and all this acid. So even if it wasn't heavy, we can't have people driving cars with acid running all over their garages. I mean, a lot more reasons than that, but that reason alone, lead acid ain't going to work. Even the Ford Motor Company figured that out. So here's the torch without the battery. Look at that light emitting diode in there, and that beautiful parabolic antenna or reflector. See, that reflector is the same shape as the big reflector coming out of those rocket engines, those Raptor engines. It's got a parabolic reflector. It looks just like this mirrored surface inside this flashlight. How about that? That's a little calculus. Anyone that knows anything about calculus knows exactly what I'm talking about. And I know a little tiny bit about calculus. So I was a math minor and taught high school math. Anyway, 18650 cell. So Tesla and his engineers figured out, well, how about this? Let's not reimagine the battery, because Panasonic has been making billions of these for a lot of years, filling up all these torches over there and on the other side of the Atlantic. This technology, you know, we didn't have these kind of batteries in the United States. I don't know why. Because the Eveready company came up with a AA cell, a little bit smaller. You know, it produces 1.5 volts. So two of them, you know, one on top of the other, produces about 3.2 volts. Well, the European guy says, you know, or the Panasonic people says, hey, let's pack this all into, you know, an 18 650 footprint, a little steel can, coated with something so that the internal material wouldn't react to it and make it leak. Remember, the ever-ready batteries always leaked and ruined your flashlights? These things are sealed up, baby. And so that's one cell produces a lot of energy, and the potential difference is the electrical value is 3.7 volts. Electrical engineers call that the potential difference between one end and the other end, 3.7 volts. So that's a little bit more volts than two AA's, sticking on top of each other, because that's about 3.2. So this is like a half a volt more potential difference, but it's got lithium chemistry in there, lithium ion chemistry in there, and it's rechargeable. Hello? Yeah, and boy, when this recharges, you got a lot of BTUs in this cell. So the smart guys over there in Tesla says, well, what if we bought, literally, what if we bought like 6,000 of these, and we hooked them up in series and parallel, and we created 14 25-volt packages and put them all in series, and 14 times 25, guess what? 350. That's the charge level of a supercharger in the Tesla network. He actually has 20,000 superchargers built all over the more industrialized areas of our planet. And the original Model S, like Sam car, the original Model S had like 5,800 of these cells, 440 cells in each module, and each module produced 25 volts with a lot of amps. Okay, and then you have 14 of these packages, the size of the top of my iPad here. The packages were about this size, actually, like an 8.5 size sheet of paper, and they're standing up and down. 440 cells. That's changed over time, but it was at one point there was about 440 cells. We counted them. And then you have 14 packs like this, and they're all laying this way under your floorboard, and that made up you multiply 444. Let me just do it for the hell of it. See how close I can get. This little math drill. All right, where's my calculator? Oh, there it is. So I'm going to clear it, of course. We're going to take 440 cells times 14. There we go, 6,160 cells. So the original S car had 6,000 cells, 5,800 to 6,000 cells, depending on the size of the battery. And they're all cells that Panasonic has been making for a decade. So all the engineering and cutting your teeth on how to produce a nice, safe cell. Panasonic has already worked through all that aggravation. Yes, sir. And they're using these batteries. They had them imported over here, so they probably bought 10,000 cells, all right, their first shipment, or 12,000. I'm making up numbers. To make a couple of making a prototype car is a lot easier than manufacturing it to scale. In other words, you can make one or two of something and make it really snazzy-wazzy, but can you make one that comes off the assembly line every minute, like the Model Y does right now? Just that one model? One car a minute comes out the back end of one of those factories. And in the front of the factory is a bunch of buckets of bolts. including these cells. Anyway, so they decided let's get a bunch of these cells. We'll put them in a package just like I talked about, and it produces an output of 350 volts and up to 2,000 amps. Now that is one sparky situation. You talk about being able to cook a lot of hot dogs. Yeah, 350 volts at 2,000 amps. That's a lot of power. You know, and the fuse on the battery, the fuse on this big battery, that's the entire floorboard, you know, between the wheels all the way underneath all the seats. The floorboards, they call it. Not boards, it's a titanium case, actually, sealed and and cooled with ethylene glycol. Because these batteries get warm. You step on the accelerator pedal and draw 1,800 amps at 350 volts. That's a lot of watts. You've heard of watts, right? Jeez. Let's just keep the math simple. 350 volts. You can see this on, maybe you can't. No. 350 times 2,000. You know, like a watt light bulb, how many watts? That's a 200 watt light bulb. Well, the number of watts that this battery can throw into two big, they're not real big, I mean, they're the size of, two 32-pound turkeys, one in the front and one in the back. You know, I mean, as far as physical size, you can imagine, a 32-pound turkey between two wheels on a car. Just imagine that. I'm trying to use something so you can get an idea of the physical size of those motors. They're not that big, but they can take, look at that, 700,000 watts of energy. 700,000 watts can be thrown into that motor, which that turns it into rotational energy, which makes those tires turn and jolts that car forward. I don't know how many of you have been in a Tesla, but when you step on what they call the gas pedal, of course you can't call it a gas pedal anymore because it's not gas. So I have changed the language, not me, but when I talk about cars and the transition from petroleum-driven vehicles like gasoline cars and electric cars, we don't call it a gas pedal anymore. We call it an accelerator pedal. When you press down on the pedal, you accelerate. Do I have the battery in right? Yeah, look. I mean, this is one bright light, this torch, which I'm not going to flash in the lens of my camera because I'll probably burn it out. But this is one hot light. You know, you can see this 5 miles away, this little stupid thing. So, I mean, that is the kind of like the beginning genius of the Tesla. Aside from Franz von Holzhausen designing a beautiful looking, that Model S car is today gorgeous. They've been making the same car. It hasn't changed much. You know, I mean, there are changes. You know, if you took a real fancy piece of equipment that could measure, the sides and the shape, the Model S looks pretty much very similar to the original Model S. And the only slight little changes is they did a little here and they did a little there, so that the coefficient of drag, the coefficient of drag, that's like if you're speeding down the road and you stick your hand out the window and you feel that wind pressure on your hand, that's coefficient, that's drag. That means it tends to slow the car down, so to speak. It slows you down. Bicycle riders, they lean over. Why? So you don't have a lot of surface area hitting the atmosphere. So you bend over so there's less air hitting a tucked-in body. You stand up tall when you ride the bike. You're not going to, the same amount of power in your legs, you're not going to go as fast because you got all that air hitting your chest. It slows you down a little bit. That's the principle of the coefficient of drag when they deal with cars and airplanes and big devices that are moving through our atmosphere. So the coefficient of drag on the Model S or the Model Y we're now driving is 0.24. The lower the number, the better. Now you have a Maserati or a Lamborghini, all these what I call spaghetti cars. I'll have a little Lamborghini with tomato sauce, please. I did when our kids were small. I said, "Hey, there's another spaghetti car." Well, which one is it, Dad? Well, I think it's a Lamborghini. Yeah, you have to have fun with these 6-year-olds. What the heck? Anyway, so the coefficient of drag of this big Model S battery-powered car has a better drag coefficient than a Lamborghini or a Corvette. Yeah, how about that? A Corvette, Chevrolet Corvette, drag coefficient 0.36. Coefficient of drag of the Model S or a big SUV, their Model X like exit, drag coefficient is like 0.27. Drag coefficient of a spaghetti car is over 3. So that's because Franz and Elon, just with a regular eye, I mean, Elon's just looking at the car. Yeah, that's a pretty looking car. Nah, I don't like that one. I like that one. You know, I mean, he's just looking at it and trying to think what the American car driver would think is attractive. They came up with what now looks like the Model 3 or the Model S like Sam, or the Model Y or the Model X, which is the bigger SUV. We drive the Model Y. It's a slightly smaller SUV, and it's a $50,000 car rather than a $130,000 car. There's a difference for you. Elon's trying to make a car that that you can at least reach for, And Elon's come up with a very marvelous car. The Model Y is the most, can you imagine? It's the most purchased car in the industrialized world. Europe, United States, Canada, not the Congo, is the most bought or financed, leased, whatever. Lease is a purchase. It's just a matter who has title. You pay for depreciation and you pay for the money cost. Either that or just write a check. You still have depreciation against it, but you don't have an interest cost. Anyway, so they decided to put this 6,000 batteries under the floorboard, put them into 14 packages, come up with 2,000 amps at 350 volts. Then Elon looks around and says, "Oh shit! Oops, sorry. How are we going to charge these things?" "Oh, I got it. We'll create superchargers, and I will build a nationwide network of these charges. So no matter which expressway you run on, you're going to be able to get from Southern California to Manhattan and up through Connecticut and down through Atlanta and over through Texas and down into the Carolinas and down Route 75 and down Route 95 into South Florida and all over Miami and all that." So he's got 12,000 superchargers all over the United States. 12 or 15,000, something like that. He's adding like 6 a day. 6 of them a day, every day. And it's a, to produce a charger, from 440 volts AC, that's the service module that comes in to a supercharger station. Comes in at 440 volts. And then they divide it to 220 volts. But actually it uses 440 volts and converts that to 350 volts DC. And you plug this power plug into the back end of your Tesla and charges it up. And it'll give you about 200 miles of range. Remember, we don't have gallons. You can't buy a gallon of electricity. So we talk about range. And even Honda, I remember by the last, we bought Hondas on 3-year leases for a long time. We got Honda 3-year leases for at least 3 of our children. Had a 50-year-old son. I don't remember getting him many Hondas. But I got a 50-year-old daughter. Her first car was a Honda I had shipped to Washington from down here. I had a car guy that I knew down here, Gene McCormick, and I said, hey, I want my daughter to have one of these nice Hondas up there in Washington, and she's just got out of college. She doesn't have any money, so we're gonna get her a Honda, Acura, Accord, Civic. I don't think it was called a Civic. And her first car was a Honda car that we sent up to her. It cost me $500 to have it trucked up to her rather than driven. So that way when it got there it was nice and fresh. You didn't have like 1,000 miles that it was burned up by some who knows what sitting in the front seat. So I'd rather have the guy that's driving the car up, in the cab of his own truck, flatbed truck. He put the car up on a flatbed truck, and he drove it up to her, and he took it back off the truck, and here's Robin, here's your new car. She'd look at it, it's perfect, take it to the car wash, looked beautiful. I think we washed it before we put it on the truck, and then covered it with canvas so it wouldn't get nasty during the 1,200-mile ride north. Cost $500. My car guy took care of that. Thank God. Gene McCormick, he'd have all that arranged. He said, Jimmy, it cost you he said, the best deal I could have from a reliable driver is $500. I said, okay, book it. And he drove it straight up. He left early in the morning. He got there at like 6 o'clock at night. And Robin's saying, the car's not here yet. I said, well, you keep looking out your window because it's coming. I said, it's going to be there in about 10 minutes. Just you can stand out front and sit on your stoop and have a little iced tea, and it's going to show up right in front of you. That's exactly what happened. That was cool. I'm not, I financed a lot of interesting stuff, but first time I did one of those things. It was fun. Particularly when it's for your daughter. It's like the most exciting thing in the world is have your children that kind of sound like you and look like you and want to emulate you, That's kind of neat, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of work and effort, and geez, it doesn't come easy if you do it right. But it sure is exhilarating to promote your own people, breeding. Everybody needs to have 4 kids. Come on. Make some babies. So our society we're only doing about 1.9 per, family. Takes 2, a boy and a girl, to make a baby, right? Still, usually. There's some chemistry that can do that, but generally it takes an egg and a sperm. Somehow or other have to come together. That can be done in a test tube, but it can be done easy, in ways that are a lot more exciting. But we're only doing 1.9 babies per family unit. That means our society will cease to be in 100 years, because the society will keep contracting because you're not replacing yourself, in a sense. Because you got a husband and wife, they end up growing to 100 years old, and then their life cycle ends, right? And they have babies when they're 25, and they get old when they're 75. For your potential 100-year life cycle, which is the high end of the life cycle. I think the average age today is 79, I think. 78, 79, something like that. It used to be 66. Now it's 79. Every few years it gets a little bit older. My cardiologist says that I'd probably still be kicking around at 94. You may die of something else, but your heart... I had bypass surgery, so that's why the topic. He said, no, I think your heart's good to 94. And then he circled the number. He said, I'm writing it on your chart. We'll see how close we come. I said, oh, dude. This is like 6 years ago. I said, are you kidding me? He said, no. That's what I do. Dr. Ordonez says after you come through an operation like that, or my other patients, if they haven't had operations like that, I examine them and I get charts from here and stress tests them and everything that we do, and I think you're good till about 94, and then we'll take a look and see how you're doing. I said, well, how about if we see each other every year, counting to that. I don't want to wait 10 years. Let's meet every year at least. I'm being funny. But anyway. So, we're only doing... That's why Elon Musk is worried. Because I've heard him talk about it. When he talks in front of all his peoples on national television. He says, come on, we got to have more babies. We're not replacing ourselves. Our society, if you do the math... And you can do the math. I've done the math on population studies and all that because I'm a math guy. Not because I'm a population study guy, but I remember doing the math. And, what's a generation? It used to be 25 years. Now it's maybe 40 or 50 years. Now we're saying a generation is every 75 years. And maybe a generation is 94 years, according to my cardiologist. He said, you may drop up as something else, but your heart's going to be working. You may get hit by a bus, your life cycle ends for a variety of reasons. Some people take a leap from a tall building. Heaven forbid, but, that happens. So, we need to have babies so we can replace the human being, or else it'll cease to be. In the United States, in our lifestyle. In the Mideast, they're having 5 babies. Okay? Their family units are creating 5 babies. So they're more than doubling themselves. So they're 2 people creating 5 babies. We're 2 people creating 1.9 babies. So our society is going to be shrinking, and their society is more than doubling. Okay, now do that with macroeconomic global implications of what I just said. Are you kidding me? Oh my God. There are people studying that like crazy. And all the formulas and climate people and all the people that work on those kinds of things. It's not me. But I can imagine the math. See, I'm a math guy. The formulas for how long it would take. Because our life cycle is getting longer, but the amount of babies we're producing, that number is shrinking. Or it has been shrinking. So you have the graph that's going this way, and you got this graph going that way, and where do the lines intersect and all that. That's calculus. Yeah, You've heard of that word, huh? Well, you can do it. You can just draw it out on paper. And that's the paper version of how some of these brilliant mathematicians 200 years ago created some of these math modules. It's amazing. A long time ago, these guys were, they didn't have anything else to do, so they figured out how to play math instead of croquet on the east lawn of Mar-a-Lago, right? Remember Trump and Mar-a-Lago and the east lawn and the west lawn and the Winter White House, the CW Post estate called Mar-a-Lago the Winter White House 80 years ago. and then their life cycle ceased to be. They were not replacing themselves as a family. How about that? And there was no one left to inherit Mar-a-Lago. Can you imagine? What an inheritance that would be. A $200 million piece of property on this, occupying the entire southern tip of the island of Palm Beach. It has intercoastal on the west side, and it has the Atlantic Ocean on the east side, and it goes, 40 acres across the middle, with a landscape budget of $5 million a year. Whew. That's all. I mean, I remember complaining about, paying the lawn cutter, $50 a week to cut my lawn. How about $5 million? Oh my God, to cut and prune all their bushes. Whew. Wow. Give you the size, the difference of the estate I'm thinking of and the estate that Trump's living in when he decides to come home for the weekends on his $100 million Boeing 757 jet. Well, now he flies. That's his jet. Oh yeah, Trump has his own $100 million jet. How many people do you think, in the United States, have their own personal $100 million jet, 757 jet? And that's not even, that's an old one. I mean, it's pretty. And old, doesn't mean as much as, like an old car, because a jet that's 20 years old, or 30 years old, but let's just say 20, they have service contracts and they have the best engineers servicing the engines, and, you're not worried about, changing the oil so much and, cleaning the spark plugs, because you got these big jet engines that are worth, $5 million a piece, $8 million a piece for just one motor. Jet engine, big, you can stand in it, and you can touch the blade and push it down. I've done it. Marilyn's father, my wife's father, we used to call him Hota Hota. J.J. Murray, John Julian Murray. Fine gentleman he was. I really loved Marilyn's dad. I couldn't wait. You think father-in-law, my wife, the in-laws. Oh, God. Gotta go see the in-laws. I couldn't wait to go see the in-laws. I love Marilyn's parents. They were the salt of the earth. Oh, God almighty. It was so wonderful. I mean, I'd spend, all afternoon talking to Marilyn's dad. Forget everybody else. I mean, I was chewing his ear off. What did he think about this? And I hit him with he says, Jimmy, you're hitting me with 1,000 questions. I said, yeah, let's go get another beer. We'd be grilling out back, and after the grilling would stop, I said, come on, Mr. I used to call him Mr. Murray. I could not think of using his first name. I just had such honor into what I thought about Mr. Murray. Couldn't do it. I could not. We had, Marilyn had a sister, and Marilyn had a brother, and their in-laws referred to Mr. Murray as John. I couldn't call him John. Are you kidding me? No, it's Mr. Murray. Jeez. Yeah. I don't know. That's maybe this is the way I was brought up. Honor your elders. I remember my mother telling me. They've been around a lot longer. They probably know more than you do. My mother told me when I was a little whippersnip. Yep. Honor your elders. They probably know more than you. They've been around a lot longer. Not always. But Mr. Murray was... Anyway, he was the... there was a big airline down here called Eastern Airlines. It got in financial trouble a while ago, and It doesn't. It ceased to be today. But Eastern Airlines was one of the best airlines in the United States, or in the world, actually. And they would, have all kinds of aircraft. And Mr. Murray started as a mechanic, with wrenches and pliers in his hands. He came home dirty from work with all the, he tried to wash his hands. You had to, he had hard hands, because he worked with his hands and his brain, and did all the servicing of these huge airplanes, 747s on down. The 747 is Air Force One right now, right? He worked on those planes. Then he became an inspector that watched over the people that did the servicing. There's a lot of servicing on those planes. I mean, you got motors, you got cockpits, you got all kinds of avionics equipment. You got electrical systems, you got emergency oxygens, everything that's inside that airplane, gets serviced by somebody. That stuff doesn't show up and work forever. It needs to be fixed. Look at all the plumbing and all the toilets and the receptacles to receive all those excrements. Trying to use nice words. Yeah, that's pretty. A lot of stuff going on there. 747 jet, 757 jet, the engines, the plumbing, the avionics, the pilots, the radios, the transducers, everything that the FAA needs to, communicate with these airplanes while they're, 10 miles up in the sky, or 8 miles, 40,000 feet up. They're usually ceiling out at like 37,000 feet up. So that's 6 miles up, all right? 5,280 feet in a mile. Let's just say 5,000. Let's round down. So 6 times 5 is 30,000 feet, 32,000 feet. That's how some of these planes fly. 30,000, somewhere between 25,000 and 35,000 feet up. That's most of the air traffic is right in there. Smaller craft, under 10,000 feet. Bigger craft, over 20,000 feet. I mean, that's not from a flight manual. I'm just plucking it. If you're flying from, distance has something to do with it too. If you're flying from New York to Miami, they're gonna climb you up to 35,000 feet of elevation. So the air traffic, you don't have as many people flying at 35,000 feet as you do in the 20,000 foot range, because there would be shorter hauls between airports that are closer together. But when you're going 1,000 miles or something, the FAA, the air traffic controllers, I should say, are going to send you up a little higher to keep you away from all the other traffic. Plus, it's faster, the air is thinner, yada yada. There's some, aerodynamics there, and what's uses less fuel, because the airlines don't want to spend any more fuel than they have to get from here to there, because they divide that by the number of passengers and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, Mr. Murray, circling back to Mr. Murray, he was a mechanic, and he worked on every part of the plane that you can work on. Now, he didn't take radios apart because you had, these companies that would manufacture all this high-tech equipment that's in a cockpit. Garmin, for example. You think of the little Garmin, GPS things that you can have in your hand if you climb mountains, which of course I don't do, but I know people that have and survived it. But all those little Garmin handheld things, they make unbelievable air traffic stuff, the radars and all this, the millions of dollars worth of avionics that's in a cockpit. A lot of that is manufactured by Garmin, Motorola, for all the audio stuff. Motorola still makes a whole bunch of that audio stuff for the military. Can you imagine all the number of radios between all the military, that just USA military? Motorola made a whole bunch of that stuff. You betcha. Garmin makes a whole lot of the stuff in the cockpit that the pilots look at to determine weather, altitude, global positioning, the ping that a plane throws out every half second that the air traffic controllers can read. It's like an electronic serial number that gets broadcasted from an airplane that can be read, 800 miles away. So they keep track of these airplanes because they got these little beeps. You got an air traffic controller that's looking over a 500 square mile area on his screen, and you got all these little beeps with all these little serial numbers. And then they have a little slide that they put in their little chart. I mean, they haven't really upgraded that equipment in a long time. So they handwrite these slides out, with these flights. Yeah. The electronic serial number of 907330. Oh yeah, that's the United Airlines flight, whatever. It's a, flight 372 Heavy. Well, when they say 372 Heavy, the flight number is 372, and heavy means, that is a 3-digit number. That kind of means it's almost heavy. But they put an H there, 372 Heavy, because it's a big one. 757, 767, 747. It's holding hundreds of passengers rather than 67 passengers. That flight number is like a 4-digit number. And you get these little puddle hoppers, and they're 5-digit number flight numbers. You're in a real small plane if it's got a 5-digit flight number. But all that, I call it syntax. A programmer has to deal with syntax. 3 digits, 4 digits, 5 digits. What does that kind of tell you, and what does that mean? Yeah. That's syntax, programming. Circling back to that IBM 403 that I used to program for. That was the beginning of my story a few hours ago. Oh my God. It's time for me to shut up. The IBM 403 that I worked on when I first started programming, I'm using that term very loosely, because I was a programmer. Yes, sir. But I actually remember a pegboard. I talked about pegboard. So we'd have these things that would plug in the back end of this machine, or actually was in the left side of the machine. So you got this big machine the size of this desk. And when they'd service it, they'd change the oil. It was a big mechanical accounting machine, essentially. They called it a computer, back in the early days of adding and subtracting, multiplying, dividing, printing reports, dealing with data processing. They called it data processing. Take the data and process it, add it, subtract it, divide it, make reports, hand paper out to people. That's what data processing was in the early day. And of course it's changed over time. Now you got digital screens and all this. But so in order to read a IBM card, remember the IBM card? And a punch card, IBM punch card? Well, someone would type, or a device would create a punch card. For example, when if you get a Social Security check, or you get a refund check rather than direct deposit, It's in the exact shape of an IBM card, which is the size of an old dollar bill, actually. The old dollar bill was the size of an IBM card. I think IBM took the dimensions of the original $1 bill and used that as the dimension for their punch cards, because IBM envisioned printing checks to people. Companies would, big companies. IBM was a big company, data processing business. IBM, what does it stand for? International Business Machines. They made business machines. Now, eventually, a computer is a business machine, but that's what IBM was, International Business Machines. Well, back when I first started programming IBM business machines, like the 403, you literally wired this device, which was a bunch of wheels and turning and oil and greases and all that stuff. It was a business machine, accent on machine. And it computed business stuff. It added, and you had these registers that would add, and then it would print a report, or it would print a check. We had these what we call line printers, and it would print the check. And the reason why IBM made the original punch cards the size of the original dollar bill is because that way, when Mr. Murray would get his paycheck from Eastern Airline, 50 years ago, it was the exact same size as a $1 bill, $5, and it would fit right in his wallet, because he'd get his check and he'd put it in his wallet. So we wanted to have the punch cards the same size as the currency, the paper currency, a long time ago. The dollar bill is smaller now than it was, but it used to be the exact size, within a millimeter of the original currency. If you take the $1 bill, $5 bill, and go back and look, you go to what did the original $5 bill look like in the 1930s? That dimension is the dimension of the original IBM punch card. Yes, sir, Bob. Why? Because IBM envisioned that these big companies, like General Motors, are going to pay their employees with checks, because they didn't have direct deposit back. They didn't think of it back then. I think they didn't think about it. Everyone got paychecks, and it was in an envelope, and you might have had a sheet of paper with it, like a pay stub. Maybe you had two of those cards in the same envelope. One was your pay stub, and the other one was actually the paycheck, which was signed. Could have been signed by a person. Generally, it was facsimile signed, with some kind of a impression, because you couldn't have an executive of Eastern Airlines signing 45,000 checks. That wouldn't be practical, or anybody. So they had, these imprint signatures that were, some guy had a special little die that he'd plug in the machine before they would run the paychecks, in Chicago. And that guy had that special key thing that would print the signature in the bottom right corner of the check. Yeah. So how about that? You probably learned something there today. The punch card was the exact size of the original paper currency, meaning let's say the 1900s currency. Back earlier than that, it had all kinds of different shapes and sizes because of the continental United States. Seems like every state, every bank had their own currency, back in the 1850s. Remember the continental currency? It had all kinds of, the Bank of Lynchburg, Virginia had their own currency. Can you imagine? Where the hell is Lynchburg, Virginia? I know where it is. I knew somebody real well that was a teacher at Lynchburg College. Well, back in the middle 1800s, they had their own currency in this little city. this little town. I'd call it a town today, yeah. All right. We're getting done here. It's 11:41. It's Tuesday. I sent my faxes to my doctor to try to encourage him to sign the right form for United Airlines, so that, because I can't carry this device. Remember this POC, portable oxygen concentrator. We get all these acronyms. It's a good exercise, mental exercise, just to keep track of all this crap. That's why it's good to read. Anyway, so I've got the portable oxygen concentrator, which I got in from the day I have a new insurance company, which that's a trip in itself, getting health insurance, because I changed insurance companies because the other insurance company kept on declining all my drugs, or three of the most important ones that are like $1,000 a month if I don't have insurance. So, you know, that's a lot of money for a drug a month. You kidding me? And it's just one of three or four. So you need good health insurance. Yeah. These drug companies are terrible. In Canada, the drug sells for $1.88. United States, $1,700. And they allow these drug companies to do this. Our elderly are getting pilfered by the drug companies. They're making money on us, and they're breaking even in the rest of the world. Well, no. That's not the way it needs to be. I mean, Trump is going to get after them. He's got other fish to fry at the moment, but he's got people working on that, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to be one of them, because he comes from the Kennedy family, and if there's one thing the Kennedy family wants is a safe, healthy population. You know, a lot of, the original liberal thinking people, came out of Massachusetts. It's one of the original states and all that. And the Kennedy family is well known for looking out after the little guy, so to speak, and looking out after the elderly. And he's going to be an interesting addition to the Trump cabinet. He's been approved. He's on there. He's part of the Trump cabinet. He's a cabinet secretary. Are you kidding me? Ooh. That's a big job. He's got hundreds of billions. I think his department is one of the top 3 filters of the entire economy go through the jurisdiction that he manages. Unbelievable. He got the Secretary of Defense. Well, let me tell you, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is handling, a budget that's bigger than the Department of Defense. If that gives you any sense of the value of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and what he's doing. He's that gentleman that has some kind of a throat malady, and he has trouble speaking for too long a time. But he's a thinking man, I'll tell you that, if you pay attention to him. Trump paid attention to him. So you got a lot of these liberal, families, and what? He's on the cabinet of Donald Trump. Go figure. Tulsi Gabbard. God, liberal Hawaiian House of Representative. In the military for 20 years. A bastion of liberalism. I don't mean that in a bad way, but, a different political thinking. I read enough about it where they're pieces of all these parties. So you combine them, they're nice. You don't want to have all of either. You want to have a mixture of both. It's like having, when I was a kid, I loved chocolate milk. I loved chocolate a lot, and I liked milk not so much. But boy, you mix them together, and oh boy, I couldn't wait to get home from school and have a nice 8 ounces of chocolate milk and oatmeal raisin cookies that my mother would make, right? You mix everything up and it makes it better than, milk I didn't like so much. Chocolate I loved. Chocolate milk, oh boy. You squirt a squirt bottle of Hershey's chocolate inside of milk and stir that with your spoon and sip that through a straw. Woo! I can think about it right now. Yeah. So look at some of the 25% of Trump, big wealthy multi-billionaire guy, right? President twice. Grover Cleveland was the only other president in our American history, I think, who had a 4-year someone else. So he served 2 terms, but it was separated by someone else. Well, Trump, President 45, President 47, with Biden, a Biden sandwich. Yeah. So 25% of Trump's cabinet, maybe, I don't know the percent, I didn't divide it. They're like, I'm not too sure who's a cabinet person and who sits in the cabinet room, as defined by the United States Constitution, which I happen to have as you know, my pocket copy. Everybody should carry. Look at that thin little docket. And it is not Bible print either. You can read it. I can't read it without my glasses, but you can. It's not that small a print. Fits in your pocket. It's 30 pages. Our entire U.S. Constitution, including the what is it we got? I got to go look at to see how many amendments we have to the United States Constitution. Is it 27 or 28? I'll bet it's 27. Yeah, there it is. Can you see that? Now, how many amendments we got? We got 27 amendments. Uh-huh. And the 27th Amendment, you know what that reads? This controls Congress. So, I mean, there are probably other reasons for it, but the one reason is that let's forget Congress. Let's just say you're mayor of New York City. If the legislature gives themselves a raise, it doesn't take effect until the next cycle that they're elected. In other words, you can't give yourself a raise now. You can only give yourself a raise if you get elected in the future, the next cycle, 2-year cycle. So if you serve a 2-year mayoral term and your legislature and you decide you're going to get, or this position is going to have a raise, it doesn't take effect until the subsequent election cycle. That's the 27th Amendment. Can you believe it? It just, it's the way we compensate our public officials. You can't give yourself a raise now. You can only give the position a raise in the next cycle. Now, if you're the one that gets elected, then fine. You enjoy the raise. But if the population doesn't like what you're proposing for the raise, then guess what? You're not going to get reelected. So you'll never get to see that raise. I mean, that's the obverse of that. But that's what all the lawyers figure out. See, when it gets, someone sues the government to say, oh, no, that's not what that meant. It meant this instead of that. Well, now you got all these constitutional lawyers, and they bicker it out in the lower courts, and they end up in the Supreme Court. And then the Supreme Court says, no, this is what it means, period. And that's what is known in the United States as case law. And the case law is all the way the courts prosecute these cases in the adversarial system we have, so that they get adjudicated, and then, these lawyers and the judges in the Supreme Court give us guidance on what they meant by that. Because, every word, and the Constitution is written in pretty regular English. But boy, I'll tell you what, you got, lawyers, I nickname them wordsmiths. Like a jewelry smith, like a blacksmith. Remember what a blacksmith is? He's the guy with a big hammer, and he heats up the stirrup in the flame with the plunger that he uses to, plunge the heat. And he has a hammer and an anvil, and he bangs out the horseshoe that gets put on the horse. Yeah, well, that's a blacksmith, because it's a dirty job, and your skin turns black. It's not because black people did it. It was actually mostly white people that did it. It's a high-paying job to be a blacksmith back in the days of the horse and carriage days. No, I didn't live through that. I was born in, well after Henry Ford made a lot of cars. 1945. Yes, sir. That's my birth year. The United States Constitution is written in pretty plain English. But the wordsmiths, the wordsmiths that, move our language, and it goes through the courts, and, it gets contorted into thinking that it's this instead of that. I mean, this whole abortion stuff with Roe v. Wade. I mean, that decision, if you read that decision, I suggest if you got nothing to do one day and you just want to take a little constitutional journey and look at the actual case of Roe v. Wade. It had absolutely nothing to do with giving birth and birth control. I mean, you look at it and say, how the hell did they do that? That's what I call the ultimate in wordsmithing. That was done like 40 or 50 years ago, and Supreme Courts and, jurisprudence has been trying to change that for decades, because it's an aberration of our system to actually have that piece of case law controlling, fertilization. What the heck? How the hell did that happen? The wordsmithing of our legal system just got perverted in that particular piece of jurisprudence. And Trump finally, he got rid of it. In his first term, I think that was a lot of that was it was gotten rid of, and it threw all the abortion cases back to the state. That's where abortion regulation should be, not in the federal government, where you got 9 people in robes are going to tell everybody in the whole country on how they're going to deal with pregnancies and terminating pregnancies or cultivating humanity. Yeah, no. Alabama may think a whole lot different than Illinois. So let the state legislatures of Illinois determine when you can have an abortion. If prenatal is in the 7th month, you really want to abort someone in this, when this little fetus has hands and fingers and a face, and, is that when you want to rip that thing from inside some woman's body? I mean, if you see what the practices of abortion is, that'll make you throw up. I was a pre-med student, and I saw some fluoroscope videos of abortions, and it would make you throw up. I swear to God, if you actually saw, I'm not talking about chemical abortions. I'm talking about, when you go to your gynecological person and they perform an abortion, it'll make you throw up. You'll go there with an empty stomach if you ever watch one of those. I remember when I was going through the pre-med training, I was saying to myself, because the one thing with the pre-med training is they circulate you around through, anatomy, thoracic surgery. If you want to work on the, ankles, knees, mending bones, or you want to be someone that does, colonoscopies. You want to be one of those guys that does all day long. You work on people's rear ends. I don't know. I don't think I would settle into that special. But doctors do it. I mean, you have specialists. That's what they do. It wouldn't be my. I'd rather work on the other end of the body. I was more into neurosurgery and that kind of thing. Thoracic surgery is pretty exciting. You deal on, with the heart, the liver, the lungs, and prostate stuff. All these medical specialties have gotten very, very special. But anyway, Constitution's a good thing to carry around. Anytime I go out to lunch and dinner with people that can tolerate it, I have a little package of Constitutions. I mean, when you got nothing else to do, you figure, what the heck? Everybody's talking about this amendment, that amendment, and, Article 2, Section 3. You can actually look it up and see what the hell are they talking about. And it's interesting to look it up. What the heck? It controls our society, our U.S. society. Constitution's it's not a living, breathing document. It's right here in my pocket. It doesn't breathe. They meant what they meant. And it was all handwritten, so they packed a lot in a sentence, I say. If you read one of those paragraphs, you say, wow, you read that very carefully. They meant a lot. Every sentence means a lot. Why? Because it was handwritten. They didn't just type it out and get exacerbated with your own verbosity. Yeah. You don't want to get exacerbated with your own verbosity. That means you talk too much. And in that theory, oh my God, it is 11:59 and 35 seconds, and I'm out of here before noon, which means I got 20 seconds to say goodbye. You all have a great day. See you tomorrow, 8:15. Bye-bye.